Life today feels like a constant storm. We wake up already tired, our phones buzzing with demands before we even taste the morning air. Bills pile up, deadlines chase us, relationships feel fragile, and somewhere deep inside we whisper to ourselves, is this all there is? We search for control. We chase happiness in the next purchase, the next success, the next relationship, but the satisfaction never lasts. It fades like water slipping through our fingers. And so we push harder, plan more carefully, and demand more of ourselves, believing that if we just manage every detail, then finally life will fall into place. Yet the harder we try, the more restless we become. Peace remains just out of reach, and our minds never stop racing. This is the hidden suffering of our age. Not just exhaustion from long hours, but the heavy weight of anxiety, the fear of losing what we have, the loneliness we carry, even in crowded rooms. Many of us try to hide it with a smile, a drink, or another distraction, but the truth lingers in the silence of the night. We are not at peace. And yet, there is a way forward not by escaping life, but by meeting it differently. Not by clinging harder, but by letting go with wisdom. The ancient teachings of the Buddha are not dusty words meant for monks in faraway monasteries. They are living truths, as relevant in New York or Los Angeles as they were in the forests of India. They are not rules to obey, but invitations to freedom. Doors that open when we dare to step through. Imagine for a moment a life where stress does not crush you, where money no longer feels like a chain around your neck, where relationships are not battles of control, but places of trust, where anxiety softens into clarity, and where every breath feels like a chance to begin again. This is not a fantasy. It is the natural state of a mind that has learned to pause, to see clearly, to release the endless chase for what cannot be held. Through mindfulness, compassion, and the gentle art of surrender, the Buddha offered us a way to live fully in this very moment, without fear of the next. It is not about withdrawing from the world, but moving through it with balance, with courage, with love that does not cling. This journey we are about to walk together is not just a talk. It is a mirror held up to your life, to the struggles you know too well: stress, money, love, fear, loss, and it is also a hand reaching out, guiding you toward another way of being. Each step will take us deeper, uncovering the roots of suffering, and then pointing toward the doors of freedom the Buddha revealed: mindfulness, letting go, compassion, and wisdom. We will see how the search for control keeps us trapped, how our attachments quietly exhaust us, how impermanence, when understood, can become our greatest teacher. We will face the injustice of life and learn how to respond with grace. We will discover the power of silence, the strength of stillness, and the radiant beauty of love that holds without clinging. This is not about religion. It is not about belief. It is about life as it is, and the possibility of living it with an open heart and a steady mind. If you have ever felt overwhelmed, if you have ever longed for peace but did not know where to find it, then you are exactly where you need to be. This is your invitation to pause, to listen, and to begin again. And so, let us take the first step, together, into the truth of our suffering and the path to freedom. We begin with a story that is not new, yet it feels more urgent than ever. From the moment we wake up, there is a quiet command whispering in our ear: take control. Control your time, control your career, control your health, control your image, control every single outcome. It sounds logical, even empowering, and we tell ourselves that this control is the very definition of freedom. But if control is freedom, then why do so many people who plan every detail still feel like prisoners inside their own minds? Why do we lie awake at night, replaying conversations, predicting problems, calculating the future, as if one more thought might finally guarantee safety? We build schedules, apps, budgets, vision boards, and rules, but peace does not come. Instead, Exhaustion comes. Anxiety comes. Restlessness comes. This is the illusion of effortless control, a belief that if we just hold tighter, everything will finally stop slipping through our fingers. But it never does. The pain of control is subtle but sharp. It shows up in the man who has every detail of his retirement planned, yet cannot enjoy a single moment with his grandchildren because he is too busy worrying about the stock market. It shows up in the woman who works late every night, believing that one more email, one more perfect presentation will secure her place in the company. Yet deep down she feels hollow, unappreciated, and replaceable. It shows up in the young student who maps out every exam, every grade, every internship, only to collapse under the weight of pressure that no human being can truly bear. The story is the same. The more we chase control, the less free we feel. Instead of mastering life, we find ourselves mastered by fear. Why does this happen? Because control is a trap. Life was never designed to be controlled. It was designed to be lived. The ancient teachings describe this as a kind of grasping, like trying to clutch sand in the palm of your hand. The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips away. Control feels powerful in the short term, but it is rooted in fear. The fear of uncertainty, the fear of loss, the fear of being vulnerable in a world that refuses to obey our plans. Control is a disguise. It pretends to be strength, but in truth, it is fear wearing armor. And this armor becomes heavy, suffocating, pressing down on the soul until we can barely breathe. The Buddha looked directly into this human struggle and spoke a radical truth. Freedom does not come from control. Freedom comes from letting go. Not a careless letting go, not a lazy surrender, but a wise, courageous release of what was never truly ours to command. He taught that suffering arises from clinging to outcomes, clinging to identity, clinging to possessions, clinging to control. And he showed that when we loosen our grip, when we allow life to flow as it is, an astonishing thing happens. Peace arises. This peace is not fragile. It does not depend on everything going our way. It is a peace that lives inside the storm, steady as a mountain, gentle as a breath. But perhaps you're thinking, if I let go, won't everything fall apart? Won't I lose my edge? Won't people take advantage of me? These are natural fears, and they reveal just how deeply we are conditioned to believe that control equals survival. Yet the truth is the opposite. The harder we try to control everything, the more we lose touch with life as it actually unfolds. We miss the laughter of our children while worrying about their future. We miss the joy of a shared meal while scrolling through endless messages. We miss the beauty of today because we are trying to guarantee tomorrow. In clinging to control, we are not living, we are rehearsing, strategizing, calculating, but not truly alive. Consider the river. A river flows freely, moving around stones, bending with the land, finding its way without hesitation. If you tried to trap the river in your hands, you would fail. If you tried to stop it with walls, it would eventually overflow. The river does not need control. It needs only space to flow. Our lives are the same. They cannot be fully contained. They cannot be perfectly managed. They cannot be forced to match every expectation. But they can flow. And when we step into this flow, when we stop fighting its current, we discover ease. We discover clarity. We discover strength that is not brittle, but resilient. The illusion of effortless control is one of the greatest sources of modern suffering. We are told to multitask, to optimize, to hustle, to push, to maximize every second of our day. And yet, we are more burned out, more anxious, more disconnected than ever before. This is not a coincidence. It is the inevitable result of a culture that worships control and ignores wisdom. The Buddhist path offers an antidote, a way of turning away from the restless chase and toward the still center of being. He invites us to see control for what it really is, a mirage. And he invites us to release it, not with despair, but with trust. Trust in impermanence, trust in the present moment, trust that when we stop clinging, life itself will carry us. This letting go is not weakness. It is courage. It takes courage to admit that we are not the master of every outcome. It takes courage to sit quietly and allow uncertainty to be present. It takes courage to drop the armor of control and meet life with an open hand instead of a clenched fist. But when we dare to live this way, something extraordinary happens. The pressure lifts. The anxiety softens. The mind, once spinning like a wheel, begins to slow. In that slowing, we discover a freedom we have been searching for all along. Not the freedom of controlling everything, but the freedom of no longer needing to. Let us pause here and take a breath. Feel how the air enters your lungs without your effort. Feel how your heart beats without your command. Notice how life itself is already unfolding without your control. You are alive in this very moment, not because you forced it, but because life is a gift that moves through you. The invitation is simple, yet profound. To live more like this, to trust the natural rhythm, to release the need to dominate every detail. This is the beginning of wisdom. This is the doorway to peace. And as we continue this journey, we will see even more clearly how this illusion of control ties into the greater struggles of our lives. We will see how our endless desire to explain everything, to know everything, to solve every mystery, keeps us trapped. And we will learn how the path of wisdom gently leads us toward clarity, not through force, but through surrender. The question that arises next is simple yet haunting. If I stop trying to control everything, how do I live? Does life not require effort, planning, responsibility? Of course it does. The Buddha never suggested that we abandon our families, neglect our work, or live without care. The teaching is not about apathy. It is about balance. There is a profound difference between wise effort and desperate control. Wise effort is like planting a seed in good soil, watering it with care, and then trusting nature to do the rest. Control, on the other hand, is like pulling on the seed every day to make it grow faster. One approach is sustainable. The other is exhausting. The wisdom of letting go does not remove effort from life. It removes the suffering that comes from forcing outcomes we cannot command. Consider how this plays out in everyday moments. Imagine a parent who insists that every detail of their child's future must be mapped out. The right school, the right friends, the right hobbies, the right career path. On the surface, this looks like love. But beneath it is fear. The fear that if the child is not controlled, disaster will follow. Yet what happens to the child under this weight? Often, they feel smothered, resentful, unable to discover their own path. The parent, too, remains restless, never satisfied, always scanning for what could go wrong. Now imagine another parent who guides with wisdom, who provides safety, encouragement, and values, but who also trusts the child to grow in their own way. This parent still acts with love, still makes effort, but without the suffocating grasp of control. Which child, do you think, grows with more freedom? Which parent feels more peace? This is the difference between effort and control. We see the same pattern in our careers. Many people believe that if they plan enough, work enough, and control enough, success will guarantee happiness. But success without wisdom only creates hunger for more. The Buddha called this the endless wheel of desire. The moment we reach one milestone, our mind is already chasing the next. Control cannot deliver the satisfaction it promises because life is impermanent. Circumstances change, achievements fade, and the ground beneath us is always shifting. True success is not measured by control over external results, but by the quality of our presence while we engage with them. When we bring mindfulness into our work, When we approach each task with clarity and calm, we find a joy that is independent of outcome. This joy is steady because it arises from within. Control also shows up in our relationships. How often do we try to shape others into who we want them to be? We cling to expectations. My partner should act this way. My friend should understand me. My colleague should agree with me. But people are not projects. They cannot be molded like clay to fit our designs. When we grip too tightly, relationships crack under the pressure. Yet when we let go, when we listen, accept, and allow others the freedom to be themselves, love deepens. Trust grows. We may not always get what we want, but we discover something better, connection that is real, not forced. The Buddha's teaching on non-attachment is not a rejection of love. It is the very foundation of love that lasts. For only when we stop clinging can we truly hold another person with open hands. At this point, you may still feel resistance. Perhaps you are thinking, letting go sounds beautiful, but how do I actually do it? The mind does not release easily. It is trained from childhood to hold, to grasp, to fight for certainty. The first step is awareness. We must notice the moments when control arises. Notice the tension in your chest when plans change. Notice the frustration when someone acts differently than you hoped. Notice the restless thoughts that replay mistakes or predict disasters. Awareness is the key. Without awareness, control operates like a hidden program, running our lives without question. With awareness, the program is revealed, and in that revelation, we find choice. The second step is compassion for ourselves. We do not cling because we are foolish. We cling because we are afraid. Control is the mind's attempt to feel safe in an uncertain world. Instead of criticizing ourselves for grasping, we can meet our fear with kindness. When you catch yourself trying to control, take a breath and silently say, "It's okay. I am safe in this moment. I can let go, even just a little." This gentle approach softens the grip without adding more pressure. Control cannot be beaten into submission. It must be melted with understanding. The third step is practice small, consistent moments of letting go. You do not need to release everything at once. Begin with something simple. When you sit in traffic, instead of gripping the wheel in frustration, breathe and allow the moment to be as it is. When a plan changes, instead of obsessing over the inconvenience, ask yourself, what new opportunity might this open? When a thought loops endlessly in your mind, whisper, "I don't need to solve this right now." Each small act of release trains the mind to trust, to flow, to rest. Over time, these small moments add up, building a deep reservoir of peace. And what is the reward of this practice? It is not passivity. It is not neglect. It is freedom. The freedom to live without being crushed by fear of the unknown. The freedom to love without strangling with expectations. The freedom to work with joy instead of anxiety. The freedom to wake each morning and feel the spaciousness of a mind that does not need to control every detail. This is not the freedom of power. It is the freedom of presence. And presence is the true wealth of life. There is a teaching from the Zen tradition that captures this truth with elegance. Let go or be dragged. We often think holding on keeps us safe, but in reality, it is the very thing that drags us through suffering. The river of life is moving, whether we resist or not. When we cling to the shore, we suffer. When we let go, we are carried. And in that current, we find not chaos, but harmony. We discover that life itself has a rhythm, a wisdom, a way of unfolding that does not need our constant interference. Trusting this rhythm is the essence of peace. As we close this first part of our journey, remember this: the illusion of effortless control is a thief. It steals our rest, our joy, our presence. It promises security, but delivers exhaustion. And yet, the antidote is always within reach. Each breath invites us to release. Each moment offers us the choice to soften, to trust, to let go. We do not need to control the entire story of our lives. We only need to meet this moment, right here, with openness. In that openness, everything changes. In that openness, peace becomes possible. Now, as we prepare to take the next step, let us carry this seed of wisdom with us. Control is not the path to freedom. Letting go is. And in the chapters ahead, we will go deeper into this truth. We will explore how the restless search for clarity, the endless hunger for answers, keeps us trapped in cycles of suffering. And we will see how the gentle art of surrender, learning to be with the unknowable, can open doors to a deeper, quieter freedom than we ever imagined. We live in an age that worships knowledge. Information is at our fingertips, answers are a click away, and yet peace often feels further than ever. We are told to just let go, but when we actually try, the attempt itself becomes another struggle. We tell ourselves, stop thinking, relax, don't worry. But the harder we push, the tighter the knot becomes. This is the paradox of the human mind. We try to surrender by effort, but effort only creates more tension. It is like trying to sleep by telling yourself over and over, go to sleep now. The more we command, the more restless we become. And so we are trapped in a strange cycle, wanting peace, trying to force peace, and losing peace in the process. That the pain in this cycle shows up everywhere. Picture a man who cannot stop replaying an argument with his spouse. He tells himself to drop it, but his mind replays every word, searching for the perfect response he wishes he had given. Or the woman who lies in bed at night, trying to silence her anxiety. She repeats calming phrases, but the very effort to silence her mind becomes fuel for more anxiety. Or the student who stares at a Zen riddle in frustration, demanding an answer, unable to accept that the riddle was never meant to be solved. Each of these people wants peace. Each is working hard for it, and each is missing it precisely because of that effort. The truth is simple, yet unsettling. Some things cannot be solved, only accepted. The Buddha and the Zen masters understood this paradox deeply. That is why they gave students koans riddles that defy logical solutions. A monk might be asked, what is the sound of one hand clapping? The student could wrestle with this for years, knowing full well the answer is not literal. The purpose is not to arrive at a clever explanation, but to exhaust the restless mind, to break the addiction to certainty, to push the seeker into a space beyond logic. The koan is a door to silence, to awareness, to a clarity that is not about answers, but about presence. In this silence, the student discovers something profound. Peace does not come from solving every puzzle. Peace comes from releasing the compulsion to solve. In modern life, we rarely face formal koans, but we are surrounded by riddles just the same. Why did this illness happen to me? Why did that relationship end? Why is the world so unfair? We ask why again and again, desperate for explanations that will make the pain feel manageable. But some questions have no satisfying answer. They live in the realm of mystery. And when we demand certainty from mystery, we suffer. The invitation of the Dharma is not to ignore the questions, but to relate to them differently. Instead of demanding answers, we learn to sit with the unknown. Instead of clutching for certainty, we allow mystery to be what it is. And in that allowing, we find a peace that explanations could never give. Think about standing at the edge of the ocean at night. The waves are vast, the darkness stretches endlessly, and you cannot see what lies beyond. If you demand to know every detail of the ocean before you trust it, you will never step into the water. But if you allow its mystery, if you let the waves simply be, you may find beauty, even awe. Life is like this ocean. It cannot be fully known, mapped, or controlled. It must be met with humility. It must be entered with trust. The practice of surrender is learning to bow before this vastness without demanding it shrink to fit our expectations. There is also a hidden freedom here. When we let go of needing every answer, we release an enormous burden. Our minds are constantly calculating, comparing, analyzing. This mental chatter devours our energy. It is like having 100 radio stations playing at once, none of them clear, all of them loud. No wonder we feel drained. But when we learn to rest in not knowing, when we allow questions to remain open, something miraculous happens. The noise quiets. In the quiet, clarity arises, not the clarity of solving everything, but the clarity of seeing what matters now. This kind of clarity is gentle, natural, like a pond reflecting the sky when the wind has stopped. It does not come from effort. It comes from stillness. Let us return to the ordinary lives where this teaching matters most. Imagine a young professional caught in the uncertainty of the economy. She wants guarantees about her future. She wants to know that her hard work will secure stability. She cannot know. No one can. But if she obsesses, if she demands certainty, she loses the only thing she truly has, the present moment. Instead, if she learns to focus on the effort she can make today, while releasing the compulsive need to control tomorrow, she discovers resilience. She still works, she still plans, but without the burning anxiety of needing absolute guarantees. This is wisdom in action. This is surrender that empowers rather than paralyzes. Or consider someone grieving a loss. The mind asks endlessly, why did this happen? Why now? Why me? These questions are natural. They are human, but they have no final answer. The search for explanation cannot remove the pain. What can help is turning toward the grief with compassion, allowing the ache to be present without needing to label or solve it. In this tender surrender, healing begins. Tears may flow, silence may deepen, but within it, a gentle strength appears. This is the clarity of the unknowable, the peace that comes not from fixing, but from embracing what cannot be fixed. The practice of mindfulness is the bridge that makes this surrender possible. Mindfulness is not about silencing thoughts by force. It is about noticing them, watching them rise and fall, without being pulled into their stories. When we sit quietly and watch the breath, the mind will wander. That is its nature. But instead of fighting it, we learn to smile at it, to gently bring our attention back, again and again. This simple act retrains the mind. It teaches us that thoughts do not need to be obeyed. Questions do not need to be answered. We can rest in awareness itself. And in that resting, a deeper peace unfolds. What does this look like in daily life? It may be as simple as pausing before answering an email, taking one conscious breath, and letting go of the urgency to react. It may be choosing to sit in silence for 5 minutes in the morning, allowing the day to begin not with frantic planning, but with presence. It may be walking in nature without headphones, letting the rustle of leaves remind us that life exists beyond our thoughts. Each moment of mindfulness is a small act of surrender. Each act of surrender is a step into clarity. And step by step, we train ourselves to live not as slaves to the need for answers, but as friends of the mystery. This is not easy. Our culture idolizes certainty. We are taught that the strong person is the one with all the answers, the expert, the authority. But the greatest teachers have always been those who could live with mystery, who could admit, I don't know, and in that humility discover deeper wisdom. The Buddha himself was asked countless speculative questions. What happens after death? Is the universe eternal? Is the soul permanent? He often refused to answer, not because he did not know, but because he understood that chasing these answers did not free the mind from suffering. Instead, he pointed his followers back to the present. What are you clinging to right now? Can you release it? This is the essence of the path. And so, the next time you catch yourself trapped in the loop of overthinking, pause. Notice the compulsion to solve. Notice the anxiety that fuels it. Then ask yourself, what if this does not need an answer right now? What if I can let it be? Feel the space that opens in that moment. Feel the breath. Feel the possibility of peace that does not depend on solving every mystery. This is not avoidance. It is wisdom. It is choosing the clarity of presence over the prison of certainty. As we close this section, let us remember, not every puzzle has a solution. Not every question demands an answer. Some of the deepest truths of life are revealed only when we stop demanding and start listening. The mind craves explanation, but the heart longs for peace. And peace is found not in conquering the unknowable, but in surrendering to it. In this surrender, life itself becomes the teacher, whispering wisdom through silence, through breath, through the vastness of what we cannot explain. And so we take the next step in our journey. Having begun with the illusion of control, we now see how that illusion extends into our hunger for answers. We chase certainty, believing it will save us, but certainty itself is another form of control. The path forward is different. The path forward is release. And in the next part, we will explore even deeper illusions, including the very sense of me that we cling to so fiercely. What happens when the self we defend so tightly begins to dissolve? What freedom lies beyond the prison of identity? Let us step into that mystery together. The hunger for answers has another dimension we rarely see clearly. It is not only about understanding the world, but also about understanding ourselves. From childhood, we are trained to build an image of who we are. We collect labels: student, parent, professional, winner, failure, strong, weak. Each label feels like an answer to the question, who am I? And yet, this identity is never stable. It shifts with circumstances. We feel confident one day, broken the next. We cling to praise, shrink from criticism, and live in constant tension because our sense of self depends on fragile, changing conditions. Just as we demand certainty from life's mysteries, we demand certainty about ourselves. And just as life cannot be solved, the self cannot be fixed. To hold tightly to identity is to suffer. To release it is to begin to breathe, but the mind resists. It says, if I do not have answers about myself, then who am I? If I am not my job, my roles, my history, then what is left? The Buddha's answer was radical. What remains is awareness itself. Beneath the shifting stories, beneath the endless labels, there is a simple, luminous presence. It does not need to be defined. It does not need to be defended. It simply is. And when we rest in that presence, we discover a peace far deeper than any answer could provide. The endless search for self-definition quiets, and in its place arises a gentle clarity. I am here, I am alive, and that is enough. This teaching can feel frightening at first. We are so used to anchoring ourselves in identity that letting go feels like falling. But consider this. How many times has your identity already changed? The child you were, the teenager you became, the adult you are now, each was a story. Each felt real, and each dissolved into something new. If identity is always changing, then perhaps what we truly are is not the story at all, but the awareness in which the story unfolds. Like a movie playing on a screen, the images shift, but the screen remains untouched. To cling to the story is to suffer when it changes. To recognize the screen is to find stability amidst change. We can see this truth in small, practical ways. Imagine losing a job. If your entire identity is built on being successful in that role, the loss feels like a death. You are no longer who you believed yourself to be. But if you see the role as part of the story, not the essence of your being, then its loss, while painful, does not destroy you. You remain. Awareness remains. Or imagine aging, watching your body change, your strength decline. If your identity is fixed on youth and beauty, the process is torture. But if you see yourself as the awareness within, not the outer form, aging becomes less a tragedy and more a natural transformation, like leaves turning in autumn. The fear softens. The suffering eases. This is the gift of release. The Buddha's teaching on anatta, or non-self, is often misunderstood. It does not mean that we are empty or worthless. It means that the self we cling to is an illusion, a shifting bundle of thoughts, sensations, and memories. To mistake this illusion for something solid is to live in fear, always defending, always striving. To see through it is to discover freedom. We are not the stories. We are the space in which stories appear. This recognition is not abstract. It is profoundly practical. It changes how we work, how we love, how we suffer. It shows us that the search for perfect answers about who we are will never end, because the self is not a fixed puzzle to be solved. It is a flowing process to be witnessed with compassion. Let us return to the theme of surrender. Just as we learn to release the need for answers about the world, we must also release the need for answers about ourselves. We can ask instead, what is happening in this moment? What am I experiencing right now? Can I meet it with presence, without judgment? In this shift, the restless search for identity softens. We no longer need to prove ourselves, to polish our image, to control how others see us. We simply live, and in that simple living, peace appears. Imagine a young man obsessed with proving his worth. He stays late at work, not because he loves the job, but because he cannot stand the idea of being seen as inadequate. Every achievement is followed by anxiety about the next. His identity depends on constant performance. Now imagine the same man discovering the teaching of non-self. He begins to see that his worth does not depend on his title or his boss's approval. He begins to rest in the awareness of his own being, not the fragile stories he tells. Slowly, the pressure lifts. He still works, he still contributes, but without the desperate need to prove. His life becomes lighter. His joy returns. This is the power of release. We might ask, if identity is not fixed, if answers are not necessary, then how do we live responsibly? Do we not need to plan, to make decisions, to know ourselves in order to act? The Buddha's path offers clarity here. He did not deny responsibility. He emphasized intention. Each moment calls for awareness. What is my motivation? Am I acting from fear or from wisdom? From clinging or from compassion? When we act with awareness, we live responsibly without the burden of rigid identity. We are free to respond to life as it is, rather than as we demand it to be. This is true clarity. It is not the clarity of solving every riddle. It is the clarity of presence guiding action. To practice this, we can begin with small experiments. The next time someone criticizes you, notice the urge to defend your identity. Pause, breathe, ask yourself, what is being hurt right now? A story, a label, or something deeper? Then see if you can release the story and rest in awareness itself. Or the next time you feel the urge to explain yourself endlessly, notice the fear driving that need. What happens if you allow the misunderstanding to exist without rushing to fix it? These experiments are not easy, but they reveal the truth. We suffer less when we let go of identity, when we release the compulsion for perfect answers, when we trust the silence beneath the noise. As we close part 2, let us remember the invitation at its heart. The world is full of questions. Our minds are full of questions, but not every question must be answered. Not every mystery must be solved, and not every identity must be defended. The deepest peace lies not in certainty, but in presence. The practice is simple, though not always easy. Notice the craving for answers. Notice the clinging to identity, and then, gently, let go. Let go and rest in the vastness of awareness itself. Let go and discover that clarity is not something we achieve, It is something we allow. It is the natural light of the mind when it is no longer clouded by the restless chase. And now, as we step into the next chapter, we will look even closer at the heart of this teaching. If the self we cling to is not solid, what does it mean to be free of it? What happens when the me dissolves into something larger, something freer, something beyond the narrow walls of identity? This is the journey ahead, into the freedom beyond me. For most of our lives, we walk through the world carrying a quiet assumption that there is a solid me at the center of it all. We speak of my body, my thoughts, my feelings, my past, my future. We believe this me is the fixed owner of experience, like a captain steering a ship. But when we look closer, when we actually examine the pieces of this identity, something surprising begins to happen. The me is not as solid as it seems. The body changes, the mind changes, even our sense of personality shifts depending on mood or circumstance. And yet we cling to this idea of a permanent self, protecting it, defending it, trying to polish it into something that will last. The Buddha called this clinging one of the deepest roots of suffering. For as long as we believe in a solid me, we are trapped in fear. Fear of loss, fear of failure, fear of death. But when the illusion begins to dissolve, a new kind of freedom appears, one that is lighter, spacious, and filled with possibility. The pain of the fixed self shows up in many ways. Think of someone who feels they must always appear strong. No matter how tired or afraid they are, they cannot admit weakness because their identity depends on being seen as tough. Inside, they may be crumbling, but they hide behind a mask, suffering in silence. Or think of the perfectionist whose entire sense of worth is tied to being flawless. One mistake, one failure, and their whole self-image collapses. Or the person who has been told since childhood that they are unworthy. They carry this story into every relationship, every decision, unable to see beyond the shadow of that belief. In each case, the suffering is not created by the external world alone, but by the desperate effort to defend an identity that was never solid to begin with. The me we protect is fragile because it is not real. The Buddha taught that what we call the self is actually a collection of processes, constantly shifting. The body is not one unchanging thing. It is cells being born and dying every second. The mind is not a fixed entity. It is thoughts rising and falling like waves. Feelings come and go, memories fade, perceptions shift. Everything that makes up me is impermanent. To cling to it as though it were permanent is like trying to freeze the wind. The tragedy is that we spend so much of our energy guarding this illusion. We defend our opinions as though they define us. We take insults personally, as if words could actually damage the essence of who we are. We strive endlessly to maintain an image, forgetting that the image is nothing more than a shadow. And in the process, we miss the simple joy of just being. But here is the good news. When we loosen our grip on the idea of a fixed self, an immense relief follows. We realize that we do not have to be perfect, because there is no permanent me to defend. We realize that criticism does not actually wound who we are, because who we are is not a fragile image, but an open awareness. We realize that our past mistakes do not define us, because the self that made them is not the same self that exists now. This recognition is not about denying existence. It is about seeing existence clearly. We are processes, not possessions. We are experiences unfolding, not static entities. And when we live from this understanding, we find freedom. Consider the simple act of anger. When we say, "I am angry," we identify completely with the feeling. It becomes me. But if we look closer, we see that anger is just an energy that arises, burns, and passes. It is not who we are. The same is true for sadness, for joy, for fear. They are visitors, not owners. To identify with them is to chain ourselves to every mood. To witness them is to remain free, even as they come and go. This witnessing is the heart of meditation. When we sit quietly and observe, we begin to notice. Thoughts are not me. They are just thoughts. Emotions are not me. They are just emotions. Even the body is not me. It is a changing form, breathing and aging without our command. This realization does not erase our humanity. It deepens it. We learn to meet each moment with compassion because we no longer carry the heavy burden of me that must be defended at all costs. This teaching is not only for monks in monasteries. It is profoundly practical in everyday life. Imagine someone insults you at work. If you believe you are a fixed self, you may feel attacked, your identity threatened. Anger or shame rushes in. But if you see the self as a process, you realize these are just words, passing vibrations of sound. They may sting, but they do not define you. Or imagine facing failure. If your entire worth is tied to being successful, failure feels like a death. But if you see yourself as more than success or failure, as a living awareness in constant motion, the failure becomes simply an event, a teacher, not a verdict on your existence. This shift changes everything. It turns life from a battle of defense into a dance of openness. The freedom beyond me also transforms our relationships. Much of the pain in relationships comes from trying to defend identities. We want to be seen in a certain way, and when others do not mirror that, we suffer. Or we try to control how others see themselves, demanding they play roles that fit our needs. But when we release the grip on identity, we open to genuine connection. We meet others not as fixed labels, husband, wife, friend, enemy, but as living, changing beings. We allow them the same freedom we claim for ourselves. And in that openness, love deepens. Compassion flows more easily. There is less judgment, less control, or presence. You might wonder, if the self is not real, then who is living? Who is listening? Who is choosing? This question itself reveals the subtlety of the teaching. The Buddha never said there is nothing. He said there is no fixed, permanent, unchanging self. There is a flow of causes and conditions, a dance of body and mind, an awareness that witnesses it all. To cling to a permanent me is to freeze this dance into something it is not. To release the clinging is to join the dance with freedom. Imagine a flame. It looks solid like one thing, but in truth, it is a process of constant combustion, always changing. The self is like this flame. It appears solid, but it is movement, flow, impermanence. To see this clearly is to awaken. The practice of dissolving the me is not about intellectual belief. It is about experience. Meditation offers us glimpses of this truth. When the mind quiets, when we observe thoughts and feelings without clinging, we begin to sense the space beyond them. We realize we are not limited to the small self we defend all day. We are the awareness in which experience unfolds. This awareness is vast, spacious, unburdened. It cannot be harmed by insult or defined by success. It does not cling to the past or fear the future. It simply is. To touch this awareness is to taste freedom. This is why the Buddha described enlightenment not as becoming something new, but as waking up to what has always been here. The self we cling to is like a dream character, full of drama and fear. When we awaken, we realize we were never the character, we were the awareness dreaming it all. This awakening does not remove us from the world. It allows us to live more fully in it, because we are no longer trapped in the illusion of being a fragile, separate self. We can love without clinging, work without fear, live without the constant pressure to prove ourselves. This is the freedom beyond me. And so, as we pause here, let us reflect. How much of our suffering comes from defending an identity? How much energy is spent trying to maintain an image that is always changing? What would happen if we loosened our grip, even a little? What space might open in our lives if we saw ourselves not as fixed beings, but as flowing awareness? This is not an abstract question. It is the doorway to liberation. It is the invitation waiting at the heart of every moment to release the burden of me and step into the freedom that has always been here. The illusion of me is so deeply ingrained that when we first hear the teaching of non-self, we may resist it. The mind cries out, if there is no self, then what about my dreams, my achievements, my memories? Are they meaningless? But this resistance is itself a clue. It shows us how tightly we cling to the story of who we believe we are. The Buddha never said our stories are meaningless. He said they are impermanent. They matter, but they are not all that we are. They are chapters in a book that keeps unfolding. To mistake a chapter for the whole story is to suffer. To see the story as unfolding within awareness is to find freedom even as the story continues. Think about memory. A moment from childhood feels vivid, yet if we return to the place years later, it looks smaller, different, transformed. The memory is not the event. It is a reconstruction shaped by time. The self that remembers is not the self that lived it. Both are fleeting. The same is true for our future plans. We imagine a me who will succeed, who will suffer, who will grow old. But that future self does not exist yet. It is only a projection. What we call me is constantly shifting between past memories and future dreams, rarely resting in the reality of now. When we finally pause, when we meet the present moment without the burden of identity, we taste something new. We taste freedom. This freedom is not an escape from responsibility. On the contrary, it allows us to act more wisely. When we are trapped in the illusion of me, our choices are clouded by fear and ego. We say things just to defend our pride. We chase goals just to feed our image. We hurt others to protect our identity. But when we see through the illusion, our actions come from clarity. We no longer need to prove anything. We can act from compassion instead of fear. We can respond instead of react. This is not weakness, it is the greatest strength. For when we no longer serve the fragile me, we are free to serve life itself. There is a story of a Zen master whose students once asked him, "Master, what is enlightenment?" He replied, "When hungry, eat. When tired, sleep." At first, the students laughed, thinking it too simple. But then they realized the depth of his words. To eat when hungry, to sleep when tired, sounds obvious, but most of us do not live this way. We eat with guilt, planning diets, and counting calories. We sleep with restless minds, worrying about tomorrow. We are rarely present. To live simply, directly, without the constant interference of me and its endless concerns, that is freedom. That is enlightenment in action. Consider also how this truth affects our view of death. One of the deepest fears we carry is the fear of losing me. We cling to life desperately, not only out of love for it, but out of fear of annihilation. Yet if the me was never fixed, if it was always a flow, then what is there to lose? The body changes, the mind changes, and at death, the process continues in a way we cannot fully see. But the awareness that witnesses life is not as fragile as we fear. Death, then, is not the destruction of a solid self, but a transformation in the ongoing flow. This does not mean we do not grieve, or that loss is easy, but it softens the terror. It opens the possibility of meeting death not with panic, but with dignity, even with curiosity. To practice this freedom in daily life, we begin with small moments. The next time you feel the sting of criticism, pause and ask, what part of me is being attacked? Is it a story? A label? Can I let that story go? Or the next time you achieve something and feel pride, ask, do I need to cling to this as who I am? Or can I simply enjoy the moment and move on? Over time, These small reflections chip away at the illusion of self. Slowly, we realize that life is lighter without the burden of me to defend at every turn. One of the greatest gifts of this teaching is the space it opens for compassion. When we cling to a fixed self, we are constantly comparing. Am I better than them? Worse than them? Do they see me the way I want to be seen? This comparison creates distance and judgment. But when we see that self is not fixed, that everyone is just a flow of changing conditions, we soften. We realize others are struggling with the same illusions we are. Their anger, their pride, their mistakes are not fixed identities. They are passing states. This recognition allows us to forgive more easily, to listen more deeply, to love more freely. Compassion blossoms naturally when the illusion of me dissolves. Imagine a world where people live this way, not defending rigid identities, not clinging to pride, but meeting each other as changing, imperfect, precious beings. Conflicts would soften. Divisions would shrink. We would see less of me versus you, and more of we. This is not just spiritual poetry. It is a practical vision for peace. The wars, prejudices, and conflicts of the world are fueled by clinging to identity. To loosen that clinging, even in small ways, is to contribute to healing not only for ourselves, but for the collective. The Buddha's invitation is simple but profound. See clearly. See that the me you defend is not fixed. See that freedom lies not in strengthening the self, but in releasing it. This does not mean we stop existing. It means we stop mistaking the temporary for the permanent. It means we live more lightly, more openly, more compassionately. It means we discover a freedom that cannot be shaken by insult, by failure, by death itself. This is the freedom beyond me. And so, as we close this third part of our journey, let us carry this truth gently in our hearts. The self we cling to is not who we truly are. We are more spacious, more fluid, more alive than any label could capture. The invitation is not to erase ourselves, but to live without chains, to love without fear, to breathe without defense, to simply be aware and free. As we step forward, the path will lead us to another illusion, our endless chase for outcomes. Even when we glimpse the freedom beyond me, we may still find ourselves running after results, believing happiness lies in the next achievement, the next milestone. In the next part, we will explore this restless chase, and we will see how liberation comes not from conquering outcomes, but from releasing them. The wheel of desire keeps spinning, but there is a way to step off. Have you ever noticed how quickly joy fades after achieving something you worked so hard for? You long for the promotion, the new house, the recognition, the relationship, and when it finally arrives, the satisfaction feels electric, at least for a moment. Then, almost without warning, the glow begins to dim. Another craving appears. Another chase begins. This is the restless rhythm of modern life. Achieve, celebrate, grow restless, and reach for more. We rarely stop to question it, because everyone around us is living the same way. We believe the next goal will be the one that finally brings lasting peace. But peace never stays. Instead, we are propelled forward again and again, like runners on a track that has no finish line. This is what the Buddha called samsara, the endless wheel of suffering driven by desire. The pain of this cycle is so familiar that it hides in plain sight. Look at the student who spends years striving for perfect grades, only to graduate and find herself restless, chasing the perfect job. Look at the entrepreneur who builds a company with passion, achieves success, and then lies awake at night, worrying about losing it. Look at the couple who dreams of buying a home, only to discover that once the house is theirs, stress about maintenance, bills, and comparisons with neighbors begins. Each person believes happiness is just around the corner, but when they arrive, the corner has already moved. The chase never ends, Because the satisfaction of desire is temporary. Like a flame that burns quickly and fades, it cannot sustain itself. Why does this happen? Because desire is built on the illusion that something outside of us can complete us. We believe happiness is waiting in the next outcome. But the nature of desire is that it multiplies. One craving satisfied gives birth to the next. The Buddha explained that this cycle is not broken by feeding desire, but by understanding it. We must see clearly that outcomes themselves cannot provide the lasting peace we seek. This realization does not mean we stop setting goals or making plans. It means we stop clinging to them as the source of happiness. It means we plant our seeds with care, but we release the desperate grip on how they must grow. Consider the farmer. He tills the soil, plants the seed, waters the ground, and waits. He does his part with diligence, but he cannot control the rain, the sun, or the season. If he obsessed over every factor he cannot command, he would lose his mind. His task is clear effort without clinging. Our lives are the same. We can act with wisdom, we can give our best, but we must release the illusion that every outcome is ours to control. When we do, life becomes lighter. We still work, we still create, but with freedom rather than fear. This teaching is not about apathy. It is about liberation. When we are caught in the chase for outcomes, we are never fully alive in the present. We live in a constant state of almost there. Our joy is postponed, our rest delayed, our peace conditional on something just out of reach. But when we let go of the obsessive chase, we rediscover the gift of now. We notice the taste of food without needing it to be perfect. We enjoy a conversation without calculating what it means for our image. We watch the sunset without needing to capture it on a screen. These simple moments are where life truly happens, and they are often missed when we are lost in the chase. Think of the last time you achieved something you deeply desired. Perhaps it was finishing a big project, or buying something you longed for, or reaching a personal milestone. Remember how it felt. Remember how quickly the satisfaction faded. And then remember the new craving that appeared almost immediately after. This is the wheel in motion. To step off the wheel is not to reject life's joys, but to see them for what they are: impermanent, fleeting, beautiful in their moment, but not the foundation of lasting peace. Lasting peace comes not from outcomes, but from presence. The Buddha often used the image of fire to describe desire. Fire consumes endlessly. The more fuel you give it, the more it grows. Desire is the same. When we feed it, it burns brighter, demanding more. But when we stop feeding it, when we simply observe it without acting, it begins to fade. This is why mindfulness is such a powerful practice. It teaches us to sit with desire, to feel its pull without obeying it. At first, this feels uncomfortable, even unbearable. But as we practice, we discover something astonishing. Desire, when not fed, eventually passes. It has no permanent hold. We are not its prisoners unless we choose to be. Imagine walking through a marketplace filled with delicious smells, flashing lights, and countless voices calling for your attention. Everywhere you turn, something promises happiness. Buy this, taste this, try this. If you believe the promise, you spend your day running from stall to stall, exhausted and unsatisfied. But if you pause, breathe, and simply observe the market without chasing, you discover peace in the middle of the noise. The market has not changed, but your relationship to it has. This is the same with life. The world will always offer us desires, but we do not need to chase everyone. We can walk calmly, choosing wisely, savoring without clinging. There is also a deep freedom in releasing outcomes, because it restores trust in the flow of life. When we cling, we believe we must force everything into place. When we release, we discover that life has its own rhythm, its own wisdom. Doors open we never expected. Paths appear we could not have planned. Sometimes what feels like failure becomes the very turning point that brings us to something greater. When we stop clinging, we make space for surprise, for grace, for possibility. We learn to cooperate with life rather than constantly trying to dominate it. And yet, the habit of chasing outcomes is strong. It is reinforced by culture, by advertising, by family expectations, by the restless nature of the mind itself. How do we practice letting go in the middle of such conditioning? We begin with awareness. Notice the next time your mind says, "I'll be happy when." Notice the craving for the next thing. Then pause and ask, "Can I find peace right here, even before the outcome arrives?" This question alone begins to break the cycle. It shifts our attention from the future to the present, from clinging to openness. We can also practice gratitude. Gratitude is the antidote to restless desire. When we pause to truly appreciate what we already have, the grip of craving softens. Gratitude does not mean pretending life is perfect. It means recognizing the gifts that are already here, the breath in our lungs, the people who care for us, the simple beauty of being alive. Gratitude grounds us in the present and reveals that joy is not waiting in the future. It is available now. As we close this first half of part 4, let us remember, the chase for outcomes is endless. It will never deliver the lasting peace we seek. But the Buddha's path offers another way. Work with effort, yes. Care deeply, yes. But do not cling to results. Plant seeds, nurture them, and then release. Trust the flow of life. In this release, you will discover a freedom greater than any outcome could bring. We can see this cycle of chasing outcomes not only in our personal lives, but also in the larger patterns of society. Entire cultures are built around the promise of more wealth, more possessions, more recognition. Advertisements whisper that happiness is just one purchase away. Schools teach us to compete for grades and jobs as if our worth depends on it. Social media fuels comparison, showing us endless images of others appearing happier, richer, more successful. And so the wheel spins faster. We measure ourselves against outcomes that are always shifting, always out of reach. Even when we catch up to one, another appears in front of us. This is not freedom, it is captivity dressed as progress. But what happens when someone dares to step off this wheel? At first, it feels strange, even frightening. If you are not chasing the next thing, what are you doing? If you are not building toward the future, are you falling behind? These are the doubts that arise when we begin to let go of outcome-driven living. Yet when the doubts soften, a new way of being emerges. Life begins to feel lighter. The simple moments, the laughter of a child, the warmth of sunlight, the taste of food dig on a richness we had overlooked. Without the constant pressure of chasing, we rediscover the joy of just being alive. This is the true wealth, a wealth that cannot be bought or lost because it does not depend on outcomes. It depends only on presence. The Buddha offered many teachings to help us practice this release. One of the most practical is the teaching of right effort. He did not say, "Make no effort." He said, "Make the right kind of effort." Wrong effort is fueled by craving and control, by the desperate chase for outcomes. Right effort is steady, balanced, guided by wisdom. It is the effort of tending the garden without demanding the harvest appear on our schedule. It is the effort of speaking kindly without clinging to how others will respond. It is the effort of practicing mindfulness without expecting instant enlightenment. This balanced effort brings peace because it is free from the fire of craving. Another practice is equanimity, the calm acceptance of both joy and sorrow, success and failure. Life will always bring both. If our peace depends on one and not the other, we will always be shaken. But when we cultivate equanimity, we learn to hold both with the same steady heart. We celebrate joy without clinging to it, and we endure sorrow without being destroyed by it. This balance is not cold indifference. It is warmth without attachment, strength without rigidity. It is the wisdom of knowing that outcomes come and go, but awareness remains. To live with equanimity is to step off the wheel of endless craving and stand in the still center of life. Let us also remember that letting go of outcomes does not mean we abandon dreams or goals. It means we hold them lightly. We can still aspire, still create, still work toward a vision, but we do so with the understanding that the outcome is not in our control. We give our best, and then we release. This attitude transforms the experience of effort. Work becomes a practice of presence rather than a desperate chase. Relationships become a place of giving rather than a field of expectation. Even health and longevity become less about control and more about doing what we can, while accepting the impermanence of the body. This shift does not diminish life. It deepens it. Imagine a musician playing a song. If she is obsessed with the outcome, how the audience will react, whether the performance will be perfect, her music is tight, strained, anxious. But if she releases the outcome and plays with presence, the music flows freely. The joy is in the playing itself, not in what comes after. Life is like this. When we release outcomes, we discover the beauty of the moment itself. The path becomes more important than the destination. And in this way, paradoxically, we often create more beauty, more joy, more success than when we were desperately chasing. For freedom and creativity flow best when we are not enslaved by outcomes. This teaching also applies to our inner journey. Many people approach spirituality itself as another chase. They think if I meditate enough, if I read enough, if I practice enough, I will achieve enlightenment, and then I will be happy. But this is just another outcome on the wheel. The Buddha warned against clinging even to the idea of enlightenment. The path is not about grasping a final prize. It is about living each step with awareness, compassion, and presence. Enlightenment is not a future outcome to be earned. It is the freedom discovered here and now when we release clinging. To chase enlightenment as an outcome is to miss the very truth it reveals. Perhaps the most profound example of releasing outcomes is found in the practice of compassion. When we help someone, if we cling to the outcome, wanting them to thank us, to change, to improve, we will often be disappointed. People do not always respond as we hope. But when compassion is given without attachment to results, it becomes pure. It is love without strings, kindness without demand. This kind of compassion is powerful. It frees both the giver and the receiver. It is an expression of the deepest wisdom, that love itself is the reward, not the outcome it produces. As we complete this part of the journey, let us reflect on the truth we have uncovered. Outcomes will always arise and fade. Cravings will always whisper for the next thing. But we are not bound to this chase. We can live differently. We can choose effort without clinging, presence without demand, love without conditions. We can step off the wheel of samsara and rest in the stillness of being. This does not mean life becomes empty. It means life becomes full of the richness of the present, the freedom of release, the joy of simply being alive. And so we turn to the next chapter of our path. We have seen the illusion of control, the trap of needing answers, and the prison of a fixed self. We have now stepped off the wheel of endless outcomes. But there is still a deeper force that holds us, attachment itself, subtle and powerful, gripping our hearts in ways we barely recognize. In the next part, we will look closely at this silent grip of attachment, and we will learn how its release can open the door to true liberation. Beneath the surface of our busy lives, there is a quieter force at work, one so subtle that we often fail to see it clearly. It is attachment, the silent grip that shapes our thoughts, our choices, and our suffering. We believe we are simply caring, planning, protecting. But in truth, much of what we call responsibility or ambition is driven by fear disguised as control, and control disguised as love. The Buddha described this force as labha, or craving, not just for material possessions, but for certainty, stability, and the approval of others. Attachment promises comfort, but what it delivers is restlessness. It ties our peace to conditions outside of us, leaving us vulnerable to every shift in circumstance. The silent grip of attachment is one of the deepest causes of modern suffering. Let us see how it unfolds in everyday life. A man works tirelessly to build wealth, not because he needs more, but because he cannot stand the thought of insecurity. His attachment to money is not about the bills it pays, but about the illusion of safety it offers. A woman checks her phone dozens of times a day, craving the validation of messages and likes. Her attachment is not to the device itself, but to the fleeting reassurance that she is seen and valued. A parent hovers over their child, not only out of care, but out of attachment to how the child's success reflects on them. In each case, the attachment seems natural, even loving. But underneath lies fear. Fear of loss, fear of being unseen, fear of the unknown. And fear, no matter how well disguised, always breeds suffering. The Buddha's insight was that attachment is not limited to things we own. We also cling to ideas, identities, and even pain. Yes, even pain. How many times have we replayed an old wound, clinging to the story of how we were wronged? In some strange way, it feels safer to hold on to the suffering we know than to step into the uncertainty of release. This is why attachment is so deceptive. It hides not only in the obvious places, our possessions, our achievements, but also in the shadows of our minds. It becomes a constant drain of energy, pulling us away from the present moment, chaining us to what cannot be held. The silent grip of attachment is exhausting because it never rests. When we attach to money, there is always the fear of losing it. When we attach to reputation, there is always the worry of how others see us. When we attach to relationships, there is always the anxiety of being abandoned. Even in moments of success, attachment whispers, "What if this doesn't last? What if something goes wrong?" And so the peace we long for remains forever out of reach because we have tied it to conditions that cannot stay the same. Attachment turns every joy into a liability, every love into a risk, every achievement into a fragile treasure to be defended. It promises security, but delivers endless vigilance. The path of release begins with honesty. We must see clearly how much of our life is driven by attachment. This is not easy because the mind resists. It says, if I let go, I will lose everything I care about. If I stop clinging, I will stop loving. If I stop striving, I will fall behind. But the truth is the opposite. Letting go does not diminish love. It purifies it. Letting go does not erase effort. It frees it from fear. Letting go does not destroy joy. It allows joy to be fully experienced without the shadow of anxiety. The Buddha never taught detachment as indifference. He taught non-attachment as freedom, the ability to love, to work, to live fully, without chaining our hearts to what must inevitably change. Imagine holding a bird in your hands. If you grip too tightly, you harm it. If you hold too loosely, it may fly away. But if you rest your hands open, supporting it gently, the bird can stay or go freely. This is the posture of non-attachment. It is not coldness. It is care without clinging. It is love without fear. In this posture, relationships become lighter, work becomes freer, and life becomes less about control and more about connection. The silent grip of attachment loosens, and in its place arises a spaciousness that feels like breathing deeply for the first time. 1. of the most powerful ways to practice this is through awareness of impermanence. Everything we cling to, our possessions, our bodies, our relationships, even our very breath, is impermanent. This is not a reason for despair. It is the most profound reason to cherish what is here now. When we truly understand impermanence, we stop clinging because we see that clinging cannot prevent change. Instead, we begin to live more fully in the present. We savor the smile of a loved one without needing to guarantee it will last forever. We enjoy the meal without needing it to be perfect. We work with care without chaining our worth to the outcome. Impermanence does not take away life's beauty, it multiplies it. For when we realize nothing can be held, everything becomes infinitely precious. Let us reflect on how attachment hides in subtle ways. We cling not only to pleasure, but also to pain. Sometimes we rehearse old arguments, returning to them again and again. Why? Because the pain has become part of our identity. To release it feels like losing a part of ourselves. Or we cling to worry, believing that if we stop worrying, something bad will happen. Worry becomes a charm, a ritual of control, even though it controls nothing. Or we cling to roles, the role of being the strong one, the fixer, the successful one. These roles become prisons, locking us into expectations that suffocate our true selves. To notice these subtle attachments is to take the first step toward freedom. The Buddha compared attachment to carrying a heavy load. Imagine walking for miles with a bag of stones on your back. You are tired, aching, and miserable. Then someone says you can put it down. At first, you hesitate. The bag feels familiar. It feels like part of you. But when you finally release it, the relief is overwhelming. This is what letting go feels like. The weight we carry is not life itself, but the clinging we add to it. Life will always bring challenges, but without attachment, those challenges can be met with clarity and strength instead of fear and exhaustion. As we pause here, let us take a breath and notice where attachment lives in us. Do you feel it in the tension of trying to control outcomes? Do you feel it in the worry about how others see you? Do you feel it in the replay of past hurts or the fear of future losses? Wherever it is, simply notice it. Do not judge it. Do not force it away. Just acknowledge. This is attachment. This is the silent grip. Awareness is the beginning of release. Each time we notice, the grip loosens a little more. And with every loosening, a little more freedom enters our lives. Awareness of attachment is the first step, but awareness alone is not enough. We must also learn to practice release. Release does not mean pushing attachment away, for resistance is another form of clinging. Release means turning toward the feeling, seeing it clearly, and gently loosening our grip. Imagine holding a rope tightly until your hand aches. To release, you do not throw the rope away in anger. You simply open your hand. The rope may still be there, but it no longer causes pain. This is the practice of letting go, not forceful, but gentle, steady, compassionate. One way to practice release is through mindfulness of desire itself. When craving arises, instead of immediately obeying it, pause. Notice where it lives in your body. Perhaps it shows up as restlessness in the chest or tension in the stomach. Name it. Craving, craving. Observe how it feels, how it changes. Like clouds moving across the sky, the craving will eventually pass. In this simple act of observation, the craving loses its power. You discover that you are not the craving. You are the awareness watching it. This realization is deeply freeing. It shows you that attachment is not who you are. It is just a passing state. Another practice is generosity. The Buddha taught that giving is one of the most direct ways to loosen attachment. Each time we give, whether it is money, time, kindness, or attention, we are training the mind to release. Generosity reminds us that we do not need to cling so tightly, that joy can come from letting go rather than holding on. Even small acts of giving create cracks in the armor of attachment. The more we give, the more we discover that our well-being is not tied to possessions or control. True wealth is found in the freedom of the open hand. Compassion is also a powerful antidote to attachment. When we focus only on ourselves, attachment grows strong. But when we open our hearts to the suffering of others, our grip loosens. We realize that others, too, are caught in the silent grip of attachment, longing for safety, struggling with fear. Compassion connects us, softens us, reminds us that we are not alone. It shifts our focus from my needs, my fears, my desires to the shared human experience of impermanence and vulnerability. In this shared space, attachment loses some of its hold. Love expands, fear diminishes, and freedom grows. We can also use reflection to weaken attachment. Consider the things you cling to most, perhaps money, reputation, health, or relationships. Ask yourself, can this truly last? Can it truly protect me from suffering? If the answer is no, then why cling so tightly? This reflection is not meant to create despair, but clarity. It is meant to turn our attention away from what cannot last and toward what is truly stable. Awareness, presence, compassion. These are treasures that do not fade with time, treasures no one can take away. The more we root ourselves in these, the less desperate our clinging to impermanent things becomes. There is also a practice of gratitude that works hand in hand with release. When we cling, we live in fear of losing. But when we practice gratitude, we shift into appreciation of what is here now. Gratitude does not cling. Gratitude celebrates. When you eat, be grateful for the food, not fearful of when it will end. When you spend time with a loved one, be grateful for their presence, not anxious about their absence. Gratitude transforms attachment into appreciation, loosening the grip and opening the heart. It teaches us that impermanence is not only loss, it is also gift, for it makes each moment precious. The silent grip of attachment will not vanish overnight. It is a lifelong practice to loosen it. But every moment of awareness, every act of generosity, every breath of gratitude weakens its hold. Slowly, the knots untangle. Slowly, the heart becomes lighter. We begin to discover a joy that is not chained to possessions, not tied to outcomes, not dependent on control. This joy is simple, quiet, steady. It is the joy of being alive, of loving without fear, of resting in the freedom of the open hand. We can see this joy in the lives of those who have practiced deeply. The stories of monks and teachers who live with almost nothing, yet radiate peace, are not meant to shame us, but to inspire us. They show us what is possible when attachment loosens. Their joy is not the joy of accumulation, but of release. It is available to us too, even in the middle of busy, modern lives. We may not live in monasteries, but we can practice non-attachment wherever we are. We can notice our clinging, breathe, release, and return to presence. We can live with open hands, open hearts, open minds. This is the path to freedom. And so, as we complete this part of our journey, let us remember, attachment is the silent grip that keeps us restless. It promises safety, but delivers fear. It promises love, but delivers clinging. It promises stability, but delivers exhaustion. Yet the Buddha's path shows us another way. Through awareness, generosity, compassion, reflection, and gratitude, we can loosen the grip. We can love more deeply, work more freely, live more lightly. We can discover that the true treasure is not in what we hold, but in the freedom of letting go. As we step into the next chapter, we will face another great teacher, impermanence itself. We have touched it here, but we will go deeper. For impermanence is not only the key to releasing attachment, it is also the doorway to wisdom, the reminder that everything changes, and that in change lies the possibility of freedom. there is a truth so simple and so obvious that we often overlook it. Everything changes. Nothing we see, nothing we feel, nothing we experience remains the same. The body we live in is not the body we had as children. The thoughts we hold today are not the same thoughts we held yesterday. The relationships we treasure evolve, shift, sometimes grow deeper, sometimes fall apart. The seasons turn, the world moves, time flows like a river that never stops. This truth is impermanence. It is the heartbeat of existence, the constant rhythm of life. And yet, despite seeing it everywhere, we resist it. We cling to what is passing. We fight against what is leaving. We long for what cannot stay. This resistance is one of the deepest sources of human suffering. Think about how much of our pain comes from trying to hold on. A parent looks at their grown child and aches for the little boy or girl they used to tuck into bed. A woman clings to the memory of a love that ended, unable to accept its passing. A man stares at the mirror, grieving the strength and youth that time has taken from his body. Each of these sorrows is rooted not only in loss itself, but in resistance to impermanence. We want life to freeze in the moments we cherish. We want certainty in a world that is built on change. But life cannot be frozen. Certainty cannot be guaranteed. The river moves whether we are ready or not. To fight it is to exhaust ourselves. To flow with it is to discover peace. The Buddha pointed to impermanence not to depress us, but to awaken us. He said, "Look closely, see clearly, notice that everything changes." This truth is not meant to make us despair, but to set us free. For when we truly see impermanence, we stop clinging to what cannot stay. We learn to love more deeply, precisely because we know the moment will pass. We learn to forgive more quickly, because we realize time is short. We learn to savor the ordinary, the warmth of sunlight, the sound of laughter, the taste of food, because we know these too will change. Impermanence makes life precious. It turns every moment into a gift, but our culture often denies impermanence. Advertisements promise products that will make us forever young, forever beautiful, forever successful. We are taught to chase stability, to build permanent identities, to create security that never fades. These promises are illusions. No cream can stop aging. No wealth can guarantee safety. No reputation can last forever. The denial of impermanence is woven into modern life, and it leaves us perpetually anxious, because deep down, we know it cannot be true. We feel the truth of impermanence in every wrinkle, every farewell, every shift in circumstance. But instead of accepting it, we push it away. And the more we resist, the more we suffer doubt. So how do we practice with impermanence? The first step is to notice it consciously. Look around you right now. Notice the way light changes in the room, the way sounds rise and fade, the way sensations in your body shift moment by moment. Notice the way your breath comes and goes, each inhale unique, each exhale gone forever. Impermanence is not abstract. It is alive in every moment. To see it clearly is to train the mind to release clinging. For when we see that nothing lasts, we begin to understand that nothing can be held. And when nothing can be held, we stop exhausting ourselves with the effort of holding. The second step is to reflect on impermanence in a way that softens the heart. When we realize that the people we love will not be here forever, it may feel painful. But this truth can also awaken tenderness. We stop taking them for granted. We listen more carefully. We speak more kindly. We treasure their presence. Impermanence teaches us to love while we can, to say the words we might otherwise withhold, to offer forgiveness before it is too late. Far from making us cold, impermanence makes us warmer, more compassionate, more alive to the fragility and beauty of human connection. The third step is to use impermanence as a teacher in times of suffering. When pain feels unbearable, remember, this too will pass. Every emotion, no matter how intense, is impermanent. Anger burns, then cools. Sadness aches, then softens. Anxiety rises, then fades. The mind may tell us that suffering is permanent, but experience shows us otherwise. If we can breathe and stay present, we discover that even the darkest storm eventually moves. Impermanence becomes a source of hope, reminding us that no state of suffering lasts forever. This truth has carried countless people through grief, through illness, through despair. It can carry us too. There is also a profound liberation in seeing that impermanence applies to success and failure alike. We often cling to achievements, wanting them to define us. Or we cling to mistakes, fearing they define us forever. But impermanence reminds us, neither success nor failure lasts. The joy of victory fades, the sting of failure softens. Both are temporary. When we see this clearly, we stop being enslaved by either. We can enjoy success without clinging to it. We can learn from failure without being crushed by it. Impermanence frees us from both pride and shame. It allows us to live more humbly, more lightly, more courageously. Let us consider a metaphor. Imagine life as a sand mandala, the intricate artwork created by Buddhist monks with colored sand. They spend days, sometimes weeks, creating these beautiful patterns with meticulous care. And then, when the mandala is finished, they sweep it away. Why? To embody the truth of impermanence. Beauty exists, but it does not last. Effort is real, but it does not guarantee permanence. The sweeping away is not a loss, it is a teaching. It reminds us that letting go is part of the path, that nothing we build or cling to will endure forever. To resist this truth is to suffer. To embrace it is to be free. Impermanence also invites us to reframe change itself. Many people fear change, longing for things to stay the same. But without change, growth is impossible. Without change, healing cannot occur. Without change, joy would never arise. Imagine if every season were winter. Life would be frozen. It is only through change that spring blooms, summer flourishes, autumn ripens. Our lives are the same. The changes we fear often carry the seeds of renewal. The loss of one path makes space for another. The ending of one chapter opens the beginning of the next. Impermanence is not only loss, it is also possibility. As we pause here, let us take a breath and reflect. Notice the impermanence in your own life. Notice what has already changed today: the weather, your thoughts, your feelings. Notice what has changed in the past year: relationships, circumstances, your own body. Let this reflection soften you. Let it remind you that clinging is futile, that release is wise, and that every moment is a gift precisely because it will not last. Impermanence is not an enemy. It is the most faithful teacher we have. It whispers to us in every moment: be present, love fully, let go gracefully, for nothing stays, and that is the beauty of life. To live in harmony with impermanence is to live with wisdom. But wisdom is not cold detachment. It is intimacy with reality. It is the courage to face change without denial, to embrace both beginnings and endings with an open heart. This kind of living is not easy, because the mind longs for security. Yet when we train ourselves to flow with change, we discover a strength that is deeper than control. We discover resilience. Like bamboo bending in the wind, we may sway, but we do not break. Impermanence becomes not something to fear, but something to trust. One of the most profound ways to practice this trust is through meditation on death. In many cultures, death is hidden away, avoided in conversation, treated as taboo. But the Buddha encouraged his students to reflect on death regularly, not to create fear, but to create clarity. To remember that life is fragile is to remember that life is precious. Each breath could be our last. Each moment could be the final one we share with a loved one. This reflection does not lead to despair. It leads to gratitude. It awakens us to the urgency of living with love, kindness, and awareness now, while we have the chance. For tomorrow is not promised. Impermanence is not a distant idea. It is woven into every breath. Consider how this reflection might transform daily life. Imagine beginning each day with the awareness, this day will never come again. Suddenly, even the small annoyances lose their power. The traffic jam becomes less of a torment and more of a chance to breathe. The difficult conversation becomes an opportunity to speak honestly, knowing time is short. The simple meal becomes a celebration because it may be the last time we taste it in this form. When we see life through the lens of impermanence, we stop postponing joy. We stop waiting for perfect conditions to live. We realize that this moment, imperfect as it is the only moment we truly have. Impermanence also teaches us the art of forgiveness. When we cling to anger or resentment, we believe we are punishing the other person. But in truth, we are punishing ourselves, carrying the heavy weight of bitterness. Impermanence reminds us, this anger too will pass if we allow it. The hurt may not be erased, but it can soften. To forgive is not to condone. It is to release ourselves from the prison of clinging. It is to trust that change is possible, not only in others, but in ourselves. In this way, impermanence becomes a doorway to compassion, showing us that no one is fixed in their mistakes, and no pain is destined to last forever. Let us also see how impermanence reshapes our relationship with fear. Much of our anxiety comes from imagining losses that may come in the future. We fear losing health, losing loved ones, losing status, losing control. These fears are natural. But when we accept impermanence, we see that loss is inevitable. We cannot stop it, but we can learn to meet it with grace. Instead of being paralyzed by fear, we prepare our hearts. We strengthen our capacity to love, to release, to adapt. This does not mean we stop caring. It means we stop clinging. Fear diminishes when we accept that change is the nature of life. What once felt like a threat becomes simply the unfolding of reality. And reality, when met with openness, is less frightening than our resistance to it. There is a saying in the Zen tradition, let go or be dragged. Nowhere is this truer than with impermanence. When we fight against change, we are dragged through suffering. When we let go, we flow with life's current. And in that flow, we find peace. This does not mean passivity. It means active participation in life without the chains of denial. We plant seeds, we nurture relationships, we work with care, all while knowing that nothing is guaranteed. This awareness makes us humble, makes us gentle, makes us wise. For we no longer pretend to control what cannot be controlled. We simply live fully and freely. To embody this practice, we might begin with small rituals. At the end of each day, reflect, what has changed today? What have I lost? What have I gained? What can I release? This simple reflection trains the mind to notice impermanence not as an enemy, but as a teacher. Or practice with objects. Pick up a flower and remember that it will soon wither. Admire its beauty precisely because it will not last. Or sit with your breath, noticing how each inhale arises fresh and each exhale disappears forever. These simple practices root us in the truth that impermanence is not something to fear, it is something to live with grace. And what is the reward of this practice? It is freedom. Freedom from the exhaustion of clinging. Freedom from the despair of loss. Freedom from the illusion of permanence. When we accept impermanence, we live more lightly. We stop hoarding experiences, possessions, and identities. We start living in the flow, open to each moment as it comes, willing to let it go when it passes. This freedom does not make us cold or detached. On the contrary, it makes us more alive. For when we stop trying to freeze life, we finally experience it as it truly is: vivid, fleeting, precious. Impermanence is not only a truth about loss, it is also a promise of renewal. Every ending carries within it the seed of a new beginning. The leaf falls and new growth emerges. The night darkens and morning returns. Our own lives are cycles of constant change, and each change, no matter how painful, opens the possibility of transformation. To accept impermanence is to trust in this cycle, to believe that even in endings, there is hope. This trust is not naive. It is grounded in the very nature of reality. It is the wisdom of the river, always flowing, always carrying us forward. And so, as we close this part of the journey, let us hold impermanence not as a threat, but as a companion. Let it remind us to love fully, to forgive quickly, to savor deeply, to release gracefully. Let it teach us that nothing can be held, but everything can be cherished. Let it show us that freedom is not found in fighting change, but in flowing with it. This is the gift of impermanence, the reminder that life is fragile, fleeting, and infinitely precious. As we step into the next part, we will explore another dimension of suffering, the injustice we often feel in life, the bitterness that arises when things do not seem fair. Why do bad things happen to good people? Why do some suffer more than others? These questions burn in our hearts, and yet the Buddhist teachings offer a way to meet even this pain with wisdom. Let us turn there next and discover how to find peace even in the face of life's unfairness. One of the deepest wounds we carry as human beings is the sense of injustice. We look around and see suffering distributed unevenly, and our hearts cry out, "It's not fair." A kind person is struck by illness, while someone cruel prospers. A hardworking family struggles to pay rent, while others inherit wealth they never earned. A child is born into war, while another is born into peace. These disparities cut deeply, not only because of the pain itself, but because of the story we tell about it. The story of fairness. The belief that life should reward the good and punish the bad. When reality does not match this story, we feel betrayed. Bitterness seeps in. Our faith in life begins to crumble. This bitterness is a heavy burden. It does not just arise in grand injustices like poverty or war. It also seeps into everyday life. A colleague takes credit for your work. A friend betrays your trust. A stranger treats you with cruelty for no reason. Each of these moments plants a seed of resentment. Over time, those seeds grow into a forest of bitterness that blocks out the light of joy. We walk through life suspicious, hardened, carrying the weight of unfairness like a stone in our chest. We tell ourselves that we are protecting our dignity, but in truth, bitterness imprisons us. It steals our peace long after the injustice itself has passed. The Buddha did not deny that life contains injustice. He did not sugarcoat suffering. He faced it directly. His teaching of dukkha, the reality of suffering, was not limited to personal pain. It included the painful truth that the world is not always fair, that causes and conditions are complex, that life does not unfold according to our preferences. But instead of despairing, the Buddha offered a path. He taught that while we cannot always control the circumstances of life, we can transform our relationship to them. We can meet injustice without being consumed by bitterness. We can find peace not by denying the unfairness, but by learning to respond with wisdom and compassion. One of the first steps is to understand the law of karma correctly. Many people misunderstand karma as a system of cosmic punishment and reward, a kind of moral scoreboard. This misunderstanding often deepens bitterness. We ask, why did this happen to me? What did I do to deserve it? But karma is not about blame. It is about cause and effect. Every action, word, and thought plants a seed. Some seeds ripen quickly, others slowly. Some ripen in this lifetime, others later. But karma is not a simple equation. It is a vast web of causes and conditions beyond our full understanding. To grasp this is to realize that injustice is not personal punishment. It is the unfolding of countless causes, some within our control, many beyond it. This perspective does not erase pain, but it softens the bitterness. It shifts us from why me to how can I meet this with wisdom. Another step is to recognize the impermanence of injustice. When we are wronged, it feels permanent, as if the sting will last forever. But time moves, circumstances shift, hearts change. What seems fixed is often fluid. Even the most entrenched injustice carries the seed of transformation. History shows us this. Oppressive systems eventually collapse. Wounds eventually heal. Not always quickly, not always easily, but nothing remains the same forever. To remember this is to find hope in the face of bitterness. It is to trust that even when we cannot see the path, change is possible. Forgiveness is also a powerful medicine for injustice. Forgiveness does not mean condoning wrong or pretending it did not matter. It means choosing not to let bitterness control our hearts. It means releasing ourselves from the chains of resentment. Imagine carrying a hot coal in your hand, waiting to throw it at someone who hurt you. Who is burned in the meantime? You are. Forgiveness is putting down the coal. It is not about the other person. It is about your own freedom. This is not easy. It takes time, courage, and compassion for ourselves. But every step toward forgiveness lightens the weight of bitterness and opens the door to peace. We can also transform injustice through compassion. When someone harms us, our instinct is to see them only as the enemy. But if we look deeper, we often see their actions are born from their own suffering. The colleague who betrays you may be driven by insecurity. The stranger who insults you may be carrying hidden pain. This does not excuse their behavior, but it explains it. And when we see their suffering, compassion can arise. Compassion does not erase accountability. It does not mean we allow harm to continue, but it allows us to meet injustice without hatred. Hatred keeps the cycle spinning. Compassion begins to break it. It is also important to remember that responding to injustice with wisdom does not mean passivity. The Buddha himself spoke out against harmful practices. Compassion includes the courage to act. But when action arises from wisdom rather than bitterness, it is more powerful. Bitterness clouds judgment. Wisdom sees clearly. Bitterness seeks revenge. Wisdom seeks healing. Bitterness burns energy. Wisdom channels it. To act from wisdom is to stand against injustice without being destroyed by it. It is to fight for justice while keeping the heart free from hate. Let us imagine a world where people could meet injustice this way. Imagine a society where forgiveness was seen not as weakness, but as strength. Imagine communities where compassion guided justice, where accountability was balanced with mercy, where the goal was not punishment, but healing. Such a world may seem far away, but it begins with each of us. Every time we release bitterness in our own hearts, we contribute to that vision. Every time we meet injustice with wisdom instead of resentment, we plant seeds of peace. The ripple of one heart affects the whole. Change is slow, but it begins here. As we pause, let us reflect personally. Where in your life do you feel the sting of injustice? What bitterness are you still carrying? Can you notice how heavy it feels? Can you imagine, even for a moment, what it would be like to release it? Not to forget, not to excuse, but to free yourself from its weight. This is the invitation of the Dharma. To let impermanence remind you that pain will pass. To let compassion remind you that suffering is shared. To let forgiveness remind you that freedom is possible. Bitterness, once planted in the heart, has a way of spreading into every corner of life. We may think it is confined to one memory, one betrayal, one injustice, but it seeps quietly into our relationships, our work, even our sense of self. It turns laughter hollow, colors joy with suspicion, and hardens the gentle spaces of the heart. This is why the Buddha urged us not to feed resentment. Resentment may feel like strength, but it is a poison disguised as protection. It corrodes us from within while leaving the outer world unchanged. To release it is not surrender, it is liberation. The practice of release begins with honesty. We must admit when we are clinging to bitterness, even when it feels justified. We must notice the way we rehearse old arguments in our minds, replaying scenes where we were wronged, imagining what we should have said, what we should have done. We must notice the way our body tightens when we recall certain names, certain places, certain events. These signs reveal where bitterness still holds us. Without noticing, we cannot release. With noticing, we open the door. Once we see bitterness clearly, we can meet it with compassion. This may sound strange, compassion for bitterness, yet it makes sense when we remember that bitterness is born from pain. We cling to resentment because we were hurt. We carry anger because something mattered deeply. To meet bitterness with compassion is to acknowledge our own suffering, to hold it tenderly rather than harshly. Instead of judging ourselves for being resentful, we can say gently, "Of course you feel this. It hurt, but you do not have to carry it forever." This softening is the beginning of release. The next step is perspective. Bitterness narrows our vision, focusing us only on what was lost or what was unfair. Perspective widens the lens. It asks, what else is true? What else is present in my life beyond this pain? This shift does not deny the injustice, but it prevents it from becoming the whole story. Perhaps the betrayal taught you strength. Perhaps the loss revealed the depth of your love. Perhaps the hardship awakened compassion for others. Perspective does not erase the wound, but it transforms its meaning. It shows us that even in injustice, growth is possible. Another practice is to channel bitterness into action rooted in wisdom. Instead of allowing resentment to consume us, we can use the energy it generates to serve life. Many people who have faced great injustice, activists, reformers, healers, have transformed their pain into service. They did not deny the unfairness, but they refused to let it make them bitter. They let it make them compassionate, courageous, committed to change. In this way, injustice becomes fuel for transformation rather than a cage of resentment. This path is not easy, but it is powerful. It shows us that bitterness is not the only option. We can choose to heal and to help. We must also remember that justice itself, in the worldly sense, is often incomplete. Courts may fail, leaders may fail, systems may fail. If our peace depends solely on external justice, we will often be disappointed. The Buddha taught that true peace must come from within, for external conditions are beyond our full control. This does not mean we stop seeking justice in the world. It means we balance that effort with inner freedom, so that even when the world falls short, our hearts remain steady. This balance allows us to fight for justice without being destroyed by its absence. Consider the story of a monk imprisoned for many years because of his beliefs. When he was finally released, people asked how he had survived without bitterness. He said, "They took my freedom, but they could not take my mind unless I gave it to them. I refused to let hatred live inside me, because that would be a second prison." This story reveals a profound truth. Bitterness is a prison we build for ourselves. Forgiveness is the key that opens the door. No matter what has happened, the choice to free our hearts remains within us. As we practice forgiveness, compassion, and perspective, bitterness begins to loosen. We find ourselves breathing more easily, smiling more freely, trusting life again. The wound may remain, but it no longer defines us. We begin to live from the open heart rather than the closed fist. And in that openness, peace returns. This peace is not naive. It does not deny injustice. It transcends it. It reminds us that our dignity is not dependent on fairness, but on the freedom of our hearts. And so, as we complete this part of the journey, let us reflect. Life will not always be fair. Injustice will come, sometimes small, sometimes immense. But we do not have to be defined by it. We can meet it with wisdom, with compassion, with courage. We can release bitterness and live freely. We can become living examples of the truth that while suffering is inevitable, being consumed by resentment is not. The Buddhist path does not promise a fair world. It promises a free heart. And a free heart is stronger than any injustice. As we step into the next part, we turn to another form of suffering that haunts so many, the constant anxiety of modern life. Even when we are not facing injustice, even when we have enough, even when things are relatively stable, anxiety creeps in. The restless mind imagines dangers, replaying fears, unable to rest. How do we meet this relentless anxiety? How do we find calm in a world that never stops? In the next part, we will explore this question deeply and discover how the teachings of mindfulness offer us not only relief, a transformation. In a world filled with noise, constant demands, and endless streams of information, the mind rarely gets a moment to rest. Even when we are alone, our thoughts race, planning, worrying, replaying, imagining. We feel compelled to respond, to comment, to explain, to act. Anxiety seeps into the spaces between moments, whispering, "Something will go wrong. You are not enough. You must do more." This is the modern condition, a restless mind that refuses to pause. And yet, there is a profound teaching in Buddhism known as Noble Silence Aryo Tuni Bhavo that offers a pathway out of this. Ceaseless mental chatter. Noble silence is not the absence of sound. It is not retreating from the world. It is a deliberate presence, a conscious choice to stop feeding the endless commentary that runs through our minds. Consider the constant inner monologue that narrates our experience. I should have said this. I shouldn't have done that. What if they think this? What if tomorrow goes wrong? Each thought breeds another. Words, ideas, and worries multiply endlessly. The mind is a relentless storyteller, and we are trapped as both audience and prisoner. Silence does not stop thoughts from arising, but it stops the habitual reinforcement, the compulsive engagement that fuels anxiety. The pain of constant mental chatter is subtle but profound. It can manifest as exhaustion, irritability, or a sense of emptiness that no distraction can fill. Even when life is going well, anxiety finds a way in, like a whisper in a quiet room. Perhaps you notice it when waiting for an important email, or when thinking about your health, or wondering how someone perceives you. Perhaps it rises when you lie awake at night, replaying conversations and imagining worst-case scenarios. The mind insists it is protecting you, but in truth, it is draining your energy and clouding your clarity. The Buddhist teaching of noble silence offers a radical alternative. Observe without reacting. Notice without clinging. Be present without judgment. When we practice silence, we step off the mental treadmill. Thoughts may arise, as they always do, but we do not have to feed them. We can notice their presence, acknowledge them, and allow them to pass. This is not suppression. It is awareness. The noise may not disappear, but our relationship to it changes. We begin to see that we are not the thoughts themselves. We are the spacious awareness in which thoughts appear and disappear. This teaching is not about withdrawal from life, but engagement with it in a different way. Silence allows us to act from clarity rather than reaction. When our minds are quiet, our perception sharpens. We notice the subtle cues of emotion in ourselves and others. We respond with insight rather than reflex. The world does not have to change for us to find peace. A shift occurs in how we relate to it. We no longer allow external circumstances, nor our own thoughts, to dictate our inner state. Noble silence becomes a sanctuary in the storm of modern life. Let us consider a practical example. Imagine a heated conversation with a friend. You feel your irritation rising, and your mind immediately begins crafting rebuttals, counterpoints, defenses. Without awareness, this internal chatter fuels tension, making the conflict escalate. But if you practice noble silence, even in the midst of the conversation, you notice the thoughts and emotions as they arise. You do not suppress them, but you do not obey them either. You respond from presence. The conversation may still be challenging, but your heart is steadier, your mind clearer, and your actions more skillful. Another application of noble silence is in daily tasks that often feel mundane or stressful. When washing dishes, commuting, or standing in line, we can notice the mind's tendency to drift, to spin narratives, to worry. We can choose instead to pay attention to the simple sensations, the warmth of water, the weight of a fork, the rhythm of our breath. In these small moments, silence is born. Anxiety softens. Awareness deepens. We learn that presence itself, even in ordinary activity, has a profound power to calm the restless mind. The strength of noble silence lies in its simplicity and its subtlety. It does not require complex rituals or external conditions. It requires only attention, patience, and willingness. Start with short periods. Sit quietly for a few minutes each day. Notice thoughts as they arise. Return to the breath. Notice sensations in the body. Watch emotions come and go. No judgment, no agenda. Slowly, this practice extends beyond formal meditation. It begins to influence how you walk, how you speak, how you listen, how you respond. The mind that once raced endlessly begins to experience space, clarity, and ease. Silence also cultivates insight. In the stillness, we notice patterns we may have ignored. The repetitive worries, the habitual judgments, the internal narratives that dictate so much of our behavior become visible. Awareness itself shines a light on these patterns, revealing their impermanence and their lack of ultimate control over us. This insight is not theoretical. It is lived. It allows us to see that much of our suffering is self-imposed, arising from habitual engagement with thoughts and stories that do not serve us. With noble silence, we gradually step out of these cycles. An important aspect of this practice is gentleness. Do not expect the mind to quiet instantly, nor force it to obey. The mind has been trained for years, sometimes decades, to churn endlessly. Patience is essential. Treat your own mental chatter with compassion. Notice it, acknowledge it, and gently return to awareness. Each time you do, the grip of anxiety loosens, the space within expands. Over time, the practice becomes a source of profound stability, an inner refuge that is always available, regardless of external circumstances. Another dimension of noble silence is the way it influences our communication with others. We often speak to fill the silence, to reassure ourselves, or to assert our opinions. But habitual speech can amplify anxiety, create misunderstandings, and deepen conflict. Practicing silence in speech, pausing before responding, listening fully without immediate commentary, choosing words with care, creates a different kind of presence. Others feel the difference. Conversations shift from reactive to thoughtful. Misunderstandings decrease. Compassion grows. Silence, when integrated into speech, becomes not withdrawal, but a bridge to deeper connection. Consider also the role of silence in creativity and insight. Many of the greatest discoveries in works of art emerge not from frantic effort, but from quiet reflection. When the mind stops chasing, when the constant commentary ceases even briefly, space is created. In that space, new ideas arise. Clarity emerges. Solutions to problems that seemed impossible appear almost effortlessly. Silence is fertile. It is the ground from which insight blossoms. By cultivating noble silence, we provide the mind with the conditions it needs to see clearly, to act wisely, and to create freely. As we continue this journey, notice how the practice of silence relates to the other teachings we have explored. Releasing control, stepping out of endless desire, loosening attachment, embracing impermanence, all of these practices create conditions for silence to emerge. And silence, in turn, strengthens these practices. It is a feedback loop. The more we allow the mind to rest, the easier it becomes to let go of control. The more we practice noticing impermanence, the more naturally silence arises. The quieter the mind, the deeper the insight. In the next section, we will explore the concept of still power, how strength emerges not from forceful exertion, but from alignment with the natural rhythm of life. Noble silence is the first doorway into this deeper power. By learning to quiet the mind, we cultivate a reservoir of energy and clarity that can be applied to action with precision and wisdom. The strength that comes from silence is subtle, yet transformative. It is the strength that does not exhaust, the power that does not destroy, the force that moves in harmony with life rather than against it. Still power is unlike the force we usually admire in the world. Society often equates strength with willpower, with the ability to push, to dominate, to conquer obstacles through sheer effort. We are taught that the stronger we are, the more we must resist difficulty, the more we must assert control. And yet, this approach often leads to exhaustion, burnout, and disconnection. The energy we expend in constant effort is rarely replenished. We chase success, recognition, and outcomes with relentless drive, only to find that our inner resources dwindle. This is the contrast between force and still power. Force acts outwardly and aggressively, often leaving us depleted. Still power acts inwardly and harmoniously, replenishing itself while allowing action to flow naturally. Still power is cultivated through alignment with the rhythm of life. It arises when we no longer struggle against the natural unfolding of events, when we observe carefully, listen deeply, and act from clarity rather than compulsion. It is the power of the river, which flows around obstacles with grace, not through brute force. It is the power of the tree, which grows steadily and firmly, bending in the wind but not breaking. Still power does not demand. It does not push. It allows, and in allowing, it moves with precision, efficiency, and resilience. To practice still power, we begin with observation. Notice the areas of life where we are expending energy unnecessarily. How often do we push against reality, insisting it conform to our desires? How often do we resist what is, believing that by forcing outcomes we will gain safety, happiness, or control? Each act of resistance consumes energy, creating tension, stress, and fatigue. By observing these patterns, we can identify where still power is possible. We can pause, breathe, and consider, where can I act from alignment rather than force? Where can I allow life to unfold without unnecessary struggle? Still power also requires patience. It is not instant, and it does not conform to the expectations of a hurried world. The mind conditioned to force and control may feel restless in the beginning. It may ask, if I do not push, if I do not struggle, will anything happen at all? And the answer is yes, but differently. Life unfolds in response to actions taken from clarity rather than compulsion. Effort is still required, but it is precise and informed rather than blind and desperate. Over time, the practice develops not only efficiency, but also resilience. The mind and heart learn to conserve energy, using it only when necessary, releasing it when it is not. We can see still power in ordinary life as well. Consider a manager who leads with force, micromanaging every detail, correcting every mistake, pushing the team constantly. The result is exhaustion, resistance, and high turnover. Contrast this with a manager who observes carefully, understands the strengths of the team, guides gently, and acts decisively only when needed. The work gets done, often more effectively, and energy is conserved. The second approach is still power in action, alignment with the natural rhythm of events, clarity in decision-making, and precision in effort. Still power also manifests in personal challenges. Life presents obstacles, illness, loss, disappointment. They cannot be conquered through willpower alone. Resistance against what is immutable only increases suffering. But when we cultivate still power, we act with discernment, responding to each situation with wisdom rather than panic. For example, someone facing a chronic illness may still powerfully manage their health, choosing diet, exercise, and treatment wisely, without wasting energy on futile anger or regret. The results are often better than sheer force could produce, because effort is guided by insight rather than fear. A key aspect of still power is recognizing when to act and when to wait. The mind conditioned for constant exertion often assumes that action is always required. Still power teaches discernment. Sometimes the most potent act is patience, the most significant movement is pause, the most powerful choice is to allow. This principle is seen in nature everywhere. The river flows around stones rather than attempting to break them. The tree bends with the wind rather than resisting it. The sun rises in its own time, unaffected by impatience. Acting in harmony with natural timing is a hallmark of still power. Still power also integrates seamlessly with the practices we have explored so far: letting go of control, releasing attachment, embracing impermanence, meeting injustice with wisdom, and cultivating noble silence. Each of these practices reduces wasted energy and frees the mind from distraction. The quiet mind becomes a reservoir of potential. When clarity arises, action becomes effortless yet precise. Still power is the embodiment of this integration, the strength that comes not from struggle but from alignment, the force that moves gracefully without depletion, the energy that acts without clinging. The cultivation of still power begins with small, practical steps. Each day, notice moments when the mind wants to push unnecessarily. Pause, breathe, ask, what is needed here? What is not? Make a choice from clarity rather than habit. Over time, these small acts accumulate, creating a deep reservoir of inner strength. We discover that life, once felt heavy, now flows with greater ease. Challenges still arise, but the mind remains steady, the heart remains open, and energy is conserved rather than wasted. Still power is also intimately linked with compassion. When we act from force, we may harm others, even unintentionally, because our energy is driven by fear or desire. When we act from still power, our actions are informed by awareness, aligned with life, and guided by empathy. This alignment ensures that our efforts are constructive, rather than reactive or destructive. True power, the Buddha teaches, is not dominance. It is the ability to move through life with clarity, grace, and effectiveness, without exhausting oneself or others. We can practice still power in moments of conflict. When arguments arise, we can notice the habitual urge to assert, to dominate, to win. Instead, pause, listen, observe the natural rhythm of the conversation. Speak only when action is needed. Respond with clarity rather than reaction. Often, this restraint creates more influence and produces better outcomes than forceful insistence ever could. Still power is subtle, but it is infinitely more sustainable than raw willpower. It is also worth noting that still power is not passive. It is not an activity. It is deliberate, mindful, effective engagement. The river does not sit still. It moves. The bamboo does not resist. It bends. Still power is action aligned with reality. Action that flows naturally. Action that preserves energy while producing results. It is the strength that allows us to act decisively without exhaustion, to love fully without clinging, to work effectively without stress. It is the culmination of wisdom and presence applied in every aspect of life. And so, as we pause here in Part 8, we reflect. Force and effort alone can create only temporary results and exhaustion. True power, the power that lasts, that does not burn out, is still power. It is cultivated through awareness, patience, and alignment with the rhythms of life. It is nourished by the practices of release, impermanence, compassion, and noble silence. Still power is the strength that sustains us through challenge, the calm that guides us through turbulence, the clarity that allows us to act without fear, without attachment, without waste. As we continue, we will explore one of the most profound applications of this power: love without holding. The heart, like the mind, is often trapped by attachment, clinging, and expectation. Yet when still power and compassion meet the heart, a new form of love emerges, one that is fierce, open, and free. In the next part, we will explore how to love fully, without clinging, guided by kindness and equanimity, and how this transforms not only our relationships, but the very way we inhabit the world. Love is often mistaken for possession. From early childhood, we are taught that to love means to hold tightly, to protect, to shape, to control. We cling to the people we care about, to the hope that they will remain unchanged, to the expectation that their presence will bring us lasting happiness. And yet, the closer we hold, the more tension builds. Love, when bound by attachment, becomes a source of suffering. The very thing we seek for joy becomes a cage. We see this in relationships everywhere. Partners struggle to fit each other's expectations. Friendships fray under the weight of unspoken demands. And even familial bonds are strained by the compulsion to control. The heart longs for freedom, but rarely knows how to allow it. The Buddhist teaching on love is revolutionary in its simplicity. Love is not possession. Love is not clinging. Love is the cultivation of kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity toward all beings, without the expectation of control or reward. This kind of love is expansive rather than restrictive. It opens rather than confines. It sees the other person as a living, changing being, not as an extension of our own desires. And paradoxically, the more we love this way, the more the heart feels full, the more joy arises, and the more connection deepens. Love without holding is not weakness, it is profound strength. Consider the common patterns in relationships. A partner may want constant reassurance, demanding attention, affection, or affirmation. The other partner responds, but as the demands increase, resentment can grow. A friendship may be colored by the need to dictate behavior or expectations. A parent may overprotect a child, believing that control is care. In each case, attachment masquerades as love. The desire to control, to mold, to secure one's own happiness creates tension, stress, and often separation. But when the mind and heart practice non-attachment, compassion, and awareness, love transforms. It becomes generous, patient, and free. To cultivate this love, the first step is mindfulness. Notice when the heart wants to cling, when the mind seeks to control. When jealousy, expectation, or resentment arises, do not judge yourself. Observe these feelings, recognize them as signals of attachment, and breathe. This awareness creates space in the heart. It is the first act of loving without holding, noticing without reacting. Each moment of awareness weakens the grip of possession and strengthens the ability to love freely. The second step is compassion. True love is grounded in the recognition that the other person is not ours to command. They have their own journey, their own desires, their own challenges. Compassion allows us to honor that reality without fear. We can care deeply, guide gently, and support fully without demanding that our vision be imposed. The Buddha emphasized that compassion is not limited to those who please us. It extends to all beings, including those who frustrate or challenge us. Love without holding is expansive because it includes the freedom of the other. The third step is the practice of joy mudita. Mudita is the ability to delight in the happiness of others without envy, without grasping. When someone we love succeeds, we can celebrate fully, without anxiety about our own status or gain. When a friend experiences joy, we can rejoice with them, not feel diminished. When a partner thrives, we can feel proud without demanding the reflection of our own worth. This practice shifts the mind from scarcity to abundance. We realize that love is not a zero-sum game. The happiness of others does not reduce our own. It expands the heart, nurturing freedom and connection simultaneously. The fourth step is equanimity. Equanimity allows us to remain balanced in love, even as life changes. People come and go, relationships evolve, circumstances shift. Equanimity is the anchor that keeps the heart steady amid impermanence. It is the awareness that change is natural and that clinging to what is transient only creates suffering. Equanimity does not dull the experience of love. Instead, it allows love to flourish without fear, expectation, or control. It transforms attachment into freedom and anxiety into serenity. Let us consider how this looks in practical life. A parent may watch a child leave home, anxious about their future. Non-attached love allows the parent to support the child without attempting to control every choice. A partner may face conflicts in a relationship. Non-attached love allows dialogue without coercion, understanding without manipulation. Friends may drift apart due to circumstances. Non-attached love allows appreciation for shared moments without bitterness for change. In each case, love transforms from burden to blessing, from attachment to liberation. Still, practicing love without holding requires courage. It challenges the deeply ingrained habits of the mind and heart. The instinct is to cling, to demand, to control. Letting go feels counterintuitive, even frightening. Yet courage arises when we witness the suffering created by attachment and choose freedom instead. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act wisely despite it. In love, this means supporting without controlling, giving without expecting, being present without clinging. Courage turns love into a force for joy rather than a source of suffering. The Buddha also taught that love is most profound when extended to all beings, not just those we favor. Metta, or loving kindness, is a practice that cultivates universal care. Begin with yourself, for self-attachment can be as subtle and binding as attachment to others. Extend loving kindness to a friend, to a neutral person, to someone difficult, to the world at large. Each act of open-hearted intention weakens the mind's habit of clinging and expands the capacity for joy, empathy, and peace. Love without holding is both personal and universal, inner and outer, grounded in freedom and expressed in compassion. Another aspect of non-attached love is understanding impermanence. All relationships, like all phenomena, are subject to change. People grow, circumstances shift, health declines, and separation comes. When we internalize impermanence, we love with greater presence and depth. We savor moments fully, speak honestly, and forgive quickly. We recognize that the gift is in the present, not in securing the future. This awareness allows love to breathe, to flow, to exist without being chained by fear of loss. Still power, which we explored in the previous part, supports non-attached love. When we cultivate inner clarity and alignment, our heart operates from a place of strength rather than desperation. The mind and heart are steady, allowing for deeper, wiser engagement with others. We act from insight rather than compulsion. We respond with gentleness rather than reaction. We offer support without control. Still power creates the internal conditions for love to flourish freely and sustainably. Let us reflect on the subtle ways attachment infiltrates the heart. We may hold a partner tightly, fearful of abandonment. We may cling to a child's dependence, anxious about their choices. We may demand loyalty from friends, anxious about their intentions. We may even cling to memories of the past, holding on to a version of someone that no longer exists. These attachments appear like love, but they are fear in disguise. Awareness, courage, and mindfulness allow us to distinguish genuine care from the grip of possession. To practice non-attached love, start small. Notice your intentions in everyday interactions. Are they motivated by fear or by care? Are they rooted in clinging or in freedom? Breathe, observe, and choose differently if needed. Practice meditation, silently wishing well to yourself and others. Notice moments when the mind wants to control outcomes in relationships and consciously release. Over time, these small practices accumulate, transforming the heart from a space of tension to a space of open, generous presence. And as we practice, we realize a profound truth. Love that does not cling is not diminished, it is magnified. Freedom and joy do not compete with attachment. They enhance love. By releasing the need to control, we allow the other person to be fully themselves. By letting go of expectation, we open to the surprises and gifts that life brings. By embracing impermanence, we savor moments more deeply. Love without holding is both more abundant and more resilient than any attachment could provide. This kind of love also nurtures self-compassion. Often, we hold ourselves as tightly as we hold others, judging, criticizing, and demanding perfection. Non-attached love includes extending the same kindness and patience to ourselves. We recognize our own suffering, forgive our mistakes, and allow our hearts to rest. Self-compassion strengthens our capacity to love others freely, creating a cycle of care that begins within and radiates outward. As we continue to cultivate non-attached love, we begin to see its profound effects on our relationships and our lives. The subtle shifts, pausing before reacting, observing before judging, offering kindness without expectation, accumulate over time. We notice that conflicts become less frequent, that disagreements can be met with calm clarity rather than anger, that connections deepen naturally. This does not mean that challenges vanish. They remain, as life is ever-changing. But the heart is no longer hostage to fear, jealousy, or possessiveness. It has discovered freedom within the ebb and flow of impermanence. The power of non-attached love becomes especially clear in moments of separation or loss. When someone we love leaves, whether temporarily or permanently, attachment creates intense suffering. We grasp at the past, imagining scenarios in which things were different, imagining what we could have done. Non-attached love allows us to experience grief fully, without clinging to the lost object or projecting endless, if only, scenarios. The heart is free to feel, to honor the connection, and to let go when the moment passes. This freedom does not erase the pain, it allows it to move, transforming suffering into presence and acceptance. Non-attached love also reshapes the way we perceive others' actions. When we encounter someone acting in ways we dislike, our first instinct is often to control, judge, or react defensively. Attachment fuels these responses because we equate the behavior of others with the security or satisfaction of our own hearts. When we practice love without holding, we can see the other person as a changing being, acting from their own conditioning, fear, or desire. This does not excuse harmful behavior, but it allows us to respond with clarity and compassion rather than reactive anger. Boundaries can still be maintained, but the heart remains free. Consider also the interplay between non-attached love and still power. The heart that practices non-attachment is steady and resilient. It does not collapse under disappointment, does not spiral into jealousy, does not become desperate for control. The mind, trained in awareness and aligned with the natural rhythm of life, provides clarity. Together, the heart and mind form a foundation from which love can flow effortlessly. This is love as force without grasping, as action without compulsion, as generosity without expectation. It is profound, subtle, and transformative. We can extend this practice beyond intimate relationships. Non-attached love can be directed toward colleagues, neighbors, strangers, and even those we consider adversaries. It is a form of generosity that does not demand reciprocity. We offer understanding, patience, and care, recognizing that each being is navigating their own suffering and desires. This universal love expands our capacity for empathy, reduces the weight of judgment, and fosters connection across boundaries. We begin to see that love is not a scarce resource. It grows as it is given freely. The practice of non-attached love also intersects with impermanence. When we understand that all beings, circumstances, and experiences are transient, we can love more fully. We do not cling because we recognize that nothing remains unchanged. We do not fear loss because we understand the inevitability of change. Instead, we engage with life deeply, present with what is, grateful for what arises, and willing to let go when it passes. Impermanence does not diminish love. It intensifies it, focusing the heart on the richness of each fleeting moment. Silence plays a crucial role in this practice. As explored in the previous section, noble silence allows the mind to rest, to observe, to see clearly. When the mind is quiet, the heart can open without distraction. In silence, the subtle tendencies of attachment, fear, and expectation become visible. Awareness of these patterns allows the practitioner to release them, creating space for love to flow naturally. Silence, then, is not absence. It is the fertile ground in which non-attached love grows. In addition to mindfulness and silence, gratitude is a key companion in cultivating love without holding. Gratitude shifts the mind from scarcity to abundance. We begin to notice the gifts in our relationships, the presence of a loved one, the support of a friend, the small gestures of kindness from strangers. Gratitude reinforces the understanding that love is already present, that connection is available in each moment, that joy does not depend on permanence or possession. This attitude strengthens the heart's resilience, allowing love to flourish even in challenging circumstances. Non-attached love also requires courage. It challenges the instincts we have learned over a lifetime, the instinct to cling, to control, to protect. Letting go feels vulnerable, even risky. We fear loss, rejection, or abandonment. Yet courage is precisely the willingness to act from freedom rather than fear. It is the recognition that genuine love does not need to possess, that joy does not need to cling, that connection can exist without control. Courage allows the heart to open fully, even in uncertainty, even in impermanence. The benefits of cultivating this love are profound and far-reaching. Relationships deepen in quality as the bonds formed are based on presence, respect, and generosity rather than fear or expectation. Inner peace grows as the heart is freed from the tension of attachment. Life becomes more vivid and fulfilling as we engage fully with each moment without clinging to what is passing. Even challenges and conflicts are transformed as we respond from clarity and compassion rather than reaction. The heart that loves without holding is both resilient and expansive, capable of enduring change and embracing connection simultaneously. Finally, non-attached love fosters self-compassion and personal growth. When we stop clinging to ideals, judgments, or expectations about ourselves, we create space for acceptance and understanding. We recognize our own imperfections and mistakes without harshness. We nurture our own growth with patience, kindness, and care. This self-compassion enhances our capacity to love others freely, creating a virtuous cycle in which inner freedom supports outer connection. The heart becomes a source of strength, generosity, and joy, not through possession, but through presence. As we complete Part 9, let us reflect. Love, when bound by attachment, is a source of suffering. Love, when practiced with awareness, compassion, impermanence, and still power, becomes liberation. It opens the heart, deepens connection, and nurtures joy. It is not diminished by the freedom of others, nor by the inevitability of change. It grows stronger, more resilient, more profound. This is the gift of love without holding. The power to love fully, freely, and wisely, in alignment with the rhythms of life. In the next part, we will explore the culmination of these teachings, the practice of living fully, integrating all the insights we have gained into a life of clarity, freedom, and joy. We will see how control, desire, self-attachment, attachment to outcomes, impermanence, injustice, anxiety, and non-attached love come together, guiding us toward a sustained, liberated, and meaningful existence. Life is a series of moments, each arising and passing in its own time. Throughout this journey, we have explored the deep currents of human experience, the illusion of control, the restless chase for answers, the fragile self, desire and outcomes, attachment, impermanence, injustice, anxiety, and finally, love without holding. Each of these currents shapes the way we live, the way we suffer, and the way we awaken. Part 10 is about integration, how to bring all these insights together into a way of living that is free, clear, and joyful, a life in which we move with presence, act with wisdom, and love without fear. The first step in integration is awareness. Awareness is the foundation on which all other practices rest. Without it, we react automatically to life, caught in old patterns of clinging, chasing, and resisting. Awareness allows us to see what is happening in the mind, body, and heart. It allows us to notice our impulses, our thoughts, our emotions, and our habits without being enslaved by them. This awareness is not passive observation. It is active engagement with the present moment, fully alive, fully awake. Through awareness, we can begin to choose how to respond rather than being driven by fear, desire, or attachment. Once awareness is established, we can bring still power into daily life. The strength we cultivate through presence, patience, and alignment allows us to act effectively without being overwhelmed by the chaos of the world. Still power enables us to respond to challenges with clarity, to navigate conflict with calm, and to work toward our goals without exhausting ourselves. This is the power that does not burn out, the strength that sustains over time, the force that moves with life rather than against it. Still power is the anchor that holds us steady while the river of life flows around us. Integration also requires release, the conscious letting go of attachment and control. We release the belief that happiness depends on possession, that security depends on certainty, that love depends on holding tightly. We release the illusion of a fixed self, understanding that we are processes, awareness, and presence rather than static entities. We release the compulsion to chase outcomes, seeing that peace arises not from external achievements, but from inner clarity. Each act of release creates space in the heart and mind, allowing freedom to grow and resilience to strengthen. Release is not loss, it is liberation. Impermanence plays a central role in this integration. To live fully, we must embrace the truth that everything is transient. People, experiences, emotions, possessions, and even our own bodies change and pass away. This understanding does not lead to despair. It leads to appreciation. When we recognize that each moment is fleeting, we cherish it more deeply. We savor connection. We experience joy more fully. We respond with gentleness to challenges, knowing they too will pass. Impermanence reminds us that life is precious precisely because it is fragile. And that clinging only creates unnecessary suffering. Justice and injustice are also woven into this integrated practice. Life is not fair, and suffering is not always deserved. But through awareness, release, and compassion, we can meet unfairness without being consumed by bitterness. We recognize that the world unfolds according to complex causes and conditions beyond our control. We act wisely where possible, setting boundaries and cultivating fairness in our sphere of influence, while maintaining inner freedom. The heart that is free from resentment is strong, resilient, and capable of responding to injustice with clarity and compassion. Anxiety and restlessness are transformed through this integrated approach. The mind that was once trapped in endless worry begins to rest in presence. The practice of noble silence allows us to observe thoughts and emotions without becoming entangled in them. Breathing, observing, and allowing create space for calm and clarity. Desire for control and certainty diminishes as we release attachment and embrace impermanence. The mind becomes a stable, open field in which insight, wisdom, and joy can arise naturally. Anxiety, once a tyrant, becomes a teacher, pointing us toward presence and freedom. Non-attached love is perhaps the most profound expression of this integration. When we have cultivated awareness, still power, release, and acceptance of impermanence, the heart can love without grasping. We care deeply for others without trying to control them. We offer kindness and support without expecting reciprocity. We celebrate joy without envy and meet suffering without judgment. Non-attached love flows freely because it is grounded in wisdom and presence rather than fear and desire. It is expansive, resilient, and transformative, bringing connection and liberation simultaneously. Self-compassion completes the circle. Many of the difficulties we experience arise from harsh self-judgment, fear, and unrealistic expectations. Integration includes turning awareness, still power, and love inward, offering the same kindness and understanding we extend to others. We acknowledge our mistakes without condemnation, accept our limitations without despair, and nurture our growth without attachment to outcomes. Self-compassion reinforces resilience, strengthens the heart, and allows us to engage with the world fully, without fear, defensiveness, or clinging. Integration also manifests in practical life through simple, mindful actions. We eat consciously, appreciating each taste and sensation without distraction. We walk with awareness, noticing the rhythm of our body and the world around us. We speak with intention, choosing words that build connection rather than conflict. We act in alignment with our values, goals, and wisdom, conserving energy by releasing unnecessary effort. Each moment becomes an opportunity to practice clarity, presence, and freedom. Life transforms from a series of reactive patterns into a deliberate dance of awareness and engagement. Integration of all these teachings: awareness, still power, release, impermanence, non-attached love, compassion, and self-compassion creates a life that is both resilient and flexible, strong yet gentle. Challenges no longer overwhelm. Joy is not dependent on conditions, and relationships are deep and harmonious. The heart and mind function as allies rather than adversaries. Suffering arises, as it always will, but it does not dominate. The rhythms of life are met with clarity and grace. The individual moves through the world with freedom, presence, and purpose. In this integrated state, the ordinary becomes extraordinary. A simple meal, a conversation, a walk, or a task at work is no longer mundane. Each moment is infused with awareness, presence, and appreciation. The mind, once restless, rests in clarity. The heart, once constrained by attachment, flows with non-attached love. Life, once overwhelming, becomes navigable, beautiful, and profoundly meaningful. The integration of these teachings transforms existence from a battlefield of suffering into a landscape of potential, joy, and connection. Let us consider how this integration affects relationships. When we act with awareness, release attachment, and love without holding, communication becomes clearer, conflicts are resolved with less struggle, and understanding deepens. We respond to others from insight rather than reaction. We set boundaries with compassion rather than fear. We offer support without attachment to outcomes. And as we do so, we inspire others to act similarly. Integration is not only personal liberation, it radiates outward, influencing the wider web of connection in which we live. As we continue this journey, we see that integration is not a one-time achievement, but a continuous practice. Life constantly presents new challenges, unexpected changes, and unforeseen difficulties. Yet with awareness, still power, release, and non-attached love as our companions, we meet these moments with clarity and presence. The mind no longer races with fear or obsession. The heart no longer clings to outcomes or possession. Each experience becomes an opportunity to apply the principles we have learned, to deepen wisdom, and to live more fully. Integration is the daily practice of living consciously. Moment by moment, gratitude becomes an essential pillar in this integrated life. Every day offers countless gifts: air to breathe, the warmth of sunlight, a friend's laughter, a meal shared, the simple beat of the heart. When we notice these gifts, when we appreciate them without clinging or expectation, our inner world transforms. Gratitude deepens awareness, softens the heart, and strengthens resilience. It shifts focus from what is missing to what is present, from fear of loss to appreciation of life itself. A life infused with gratitude is alive with richness. Even in the midst of challenges, mindful presence transforms ordinary activity into meditation in motion. Washing dishes, folding clothes, walking to work, or listening to a conversation becomes practice, an opportunity to apply awareness, release, and still power. Each gesture is imbued with intention. We act deliberately, not out of habit or reaction. We engage with the world fully, observing without judgment, participating without clinging, and breathing freely amidst the flow of life. Mindful presence allows the ordinary to become sacred, the mundane to reveal its depth, and the fleeting to be experienced fully. The practice of non-attached love extends not only to others, but also to ourselves. Self-compassion is a natural outcome of this integration. We stop harshly judging our failures or shortcomings. We release the pressure of perfection. We nurture ourselves with patience, understanding, and care. Self-compassion allows the heart to remain open in the face of imperfection, mistakes, and change. It strengthens resilience and reinforces the ability to meet life with courage, clarity, and joy. By loving ourselves without clinging, we are better able to love others freely and wisely. Impermanence, once fully embraced, deepens the experience of freedom. We recognize that nothing, no matter how cherished, lasts forever. Relationships evolve, circumstances shift, health changes, opportunities arise and fade. Instead of clinging, we engage fully, appreciating the present moment. We release fear of loss because we understand that change is inevitable. Impermanence, far from being a threat, becomes a source of liberation. Each moment is precious precisely because it will not last, and awareness of this truth enriches every breath, every action, and every connection. Challenges continue to arise, yet the integrated practitioner meets them with equanimity. Unfairness, injustice, loss, and disappointment are inevitable in life, but the heart remains free from bitterness. The mind, trained in still power and awareness, remains steady amidst uncertainty. Anxiety is transformed into clarity. Desire is balanced by release. The individual moves with the flow of life rather than against it, responding wisely to each situation. Integration does not eliminate difficulties. It equips the practitioner to navigate them with grace, compassion, and resilience. This integration also illuminates the path of action. When we act from awareness, clarity, and non-attachment, our choices are guided by insight rather than compulsion. Work becomes purposeful rather than stressful. Relationships deepen without clinging, and challenges are met with skill rather than panic. Each decision is informed by understanding, each response guided by wisdom. We act fully, yet without being burdened by fear, desire, or the illusion of control. Action and freedom coexist in harmony, creating a life of effectiveness and peace. Consider the culmination of all the teachings. A person lives fully aware of impermanence, free from attachment, capable of loving without holding, guided by still power, compassionate towards self and others, and present in every moment. This life is not devoid of suffering, but suffering no longer dictates its rhythm. Challenges are met with clarity, losses are experienced without despair, success is celebrated without clinging, and relationships flourish without control. This is the manifestation of integration, freedom in action, joy in presence, wisdom in practice, and love without boundaries. Integration also transforms the perception of time. Life is no longer measured solely by achievement, accumulation, or control. Moments become the metric, presence becomes the value, and awareness becomes the guide. The practitioner no longer waits for happiness in the future or clings to it in the past. Happiness arises in the present, naturally and spontaneously, as a product of living aligned with truth rather than illusion. Each breath becomes a doorway to clarity. Each interaction becomes an opportunity for love. Each challenge becomes a teacher. As integration deepens, we notice a shift in perspective. External circumstances lose their power to disturb inner peace. Praise and criticism, success and failure, gain and loss all are experienced without attachment. The heart remains open, the mind remains clear, and life is lived fully. Integration creates a dynamic equilibrium, a state in which inner freedom coexists with engagement, joy coexists with impermanence, and love coexists with wisdom. This equilibrium is not static. It flows, adapting to each moment, each change, each experience. The culmination of these teachings is not an endpoint, but a living, breathing practice. Life continues to unfold with unpredictability, complexity, and beauty. Yet the practitioner has cultivated the resources to navigate it with clarity, compassion, and freedom. Awareness, still power, release, impermanence, non-attached love, and self-compassion are no longer abstract concepts. They are lived realities. Each breath, each thought, each action is an opportunity to apply these principles. Each moment is a chance to live fully, freely, and wisely. Let us reflect on the essence of this integration. Control is relinquished, yet life unfolds with more clarity and precision than ever before. Desire is transformed, no longer a source of suffering, but a guide to purpose and growth. Self-attachment dissolves, revealing the spaciousness of awareness and the lightness of being. Attachment to outcomes is released, allowing action to flow naturally and effectively. Awareness of impermanence deepens appreciation, patience, and joy. Injustice is met with wisdom and compassion. Anxiety is transformed into clarity and presence. Love, free from grasping, flows abundantly to self and others. This is the integration of the teachings, a life fully realized. As we approach the conclusion of this journey, we recognize that the path is not linear. Moments of attachment, fear, and anxiety will arise, just as moments of clarity, compassion, and joy will. The practice is ongoing, dynamic, and responsive. Each day provides the opportunity to renew commitment to awareness, still power, release, impermanence, and non-attached love. The life of integration is a living practice, responsive to the constant flux of experience, yet anchored in principles that foster freedom, clarity, and joy. The culmination of this integrated practice is a life lived with purpose, presence, and meaning. We act not from compulsion, but from insight. We love not from possession, but from generosity. We meet challenges not with resistance, but with skill. We engage with life not with fear, but with courage. We navigate suffering not with bitterness, but with compassion. The ordinary becomes extraordinary. Every breath, every moment, every connection is infused with awareness, intention, and freedom. Life becomes a dance of clarity, presence, and love. Guided by the principles we have explored, as we complete this journey, we realize that freedom, clarity, and joy are not distant goals. They are available in each moment. The practices we have explored, letting go of control, releasing attachment, embracing impermanence, cultivating still power, observing noble silence, and loving without holding, provide the tools to navigate life with skill and grace. Integration is the art of living fully, freely, and wisely. It is the culmination of understanding, practice, and presence. It is a life that responds to the rhythms of reality with clarity, compassion, and love.